Hello, so like all the other what ifs, this isn't mine, it's a fanfic. The link is the description if you want to check it out. Anyways, let's get into it.
Hello?
Anime demigod.
Here?
Author Akuma style, flashback no jutsu, 10 days ago. Naruto was in a clearing in the Forest of Death. He was practicing drawing the seals for his Hato, way of destruction or demon art, and Bakudo, way of binding, as he called them. He didn't actually activate them, but simply wanted to get certain seals drawn in less than 5 seconds. He had been practicing for about 3 hours and it was beginning to get late. Little did he know, several pairs of eyes were stalking him. Naruto was drawing another seal when he was abruptly interrupted by 3 large orange and black blurs. Naruto rolled with the blurs as they growled and latched onto him. One set of eyes widened and the owner tensed. Naruto came to a stop with 3 rather large tiger cubs playfully growling at him as their tails swished in amusement. Naruto chuckled aloud. Well, you 3 have certainly grown, he commented, getting what appeared to be smirks from the cubs. They were easily the size of a small pony, each. One was on his chest, the other 2 each had a paw next to the center one, again on his chest, and they all seemed to share a look before Naruto found himself in another, catfight. A low growling could be heard from the underbrush and a tiger the size of a horse walked into the clearing, seemingly smiling at her cubs playing with Naruto. The hidden goddess relaxed and even smiled as she watched Naruto, whom she considered to be far more mature than most gods, be little more than a kid, even if only for a while. She knew his childhood, and was glad to see he hadn't lost all of his innocence. She giggled slightly as she watched the elder tiger bat her children away from Naruto and glare at them to stop messing with him. Naruto chuckled as he stood up. Now, they just wanted to have fun. You could let them play some more, couldn't you? He said to the big animal. Said tiger seemed to give Naruto a hell no look as she started herding her cubs onwards. The cubs growled in disappointment but moved away. Naruto shook his head as they looked back at him. Listen to your Kaa-san now. I'll come play with you some other time, he said. The cubs seemed to brighten at this and they disappeared into the underbrush, heading for home. Amaterasu smiled and jumped down. You handled that pretty well, Naruto-kun, she said. Naruto chuckled. Yeah, I train here so often that most of the animals just know to either avoid me or befriend me. Those cubs? I was there when their mom birthed them. I've played with them every time we run into one another and the mother seems to like me, he said, smiling softly at remembering the birthing he witnessed. Amaterasu felt a warm glow in her chest. There was something heartwarming about seeing Naruto happy for once. Sure, he was happy around Hikari or Anko, but this was different. This was a happiness he had found. Not one given to him by those that loved him. She smiled and said, that is a magnificent thing to witness, Naruto-kun. It's wonderful that you can connect with the cubs. I'm glad you have such a good connection to nature. So many humans, ninja even, are out of touch with their instincts and yet, you seem to be closer to nature than even some animals, she commented. Naruto rubbed his head sheepishly. Really? He asked. Amaterasu nodded. Yes, she said. A comfortable silence fell around the pair, until Amaterasu decided she would bring up why she was here in the first place. Naruto-kun, she asked, getting Naruto's attention. I wanted to ask you. Why did you accept Hikari-chan's condition of marriage for your bloodline? I mean, she told me about the agreement and all, but I don't know any human that would willingly agree so readily to marriage at age 10, she said. Naruto sighed and sat down on a log nearby, offering her a seat next to him, which she graciously took. To be honest? First, I was already bonded with her for my life. Why not make it more enjoyable for the both of us? Second, at age 8 I knew I was a jinhiriki. Even if a woman agreed to be with me, she would be scorned and hated as a demon whore and I would never subject anyone to that. So, I pretty much resigned myself to never having a family, despite wanting one all my life. Amaterasu cringed at that logic, although it wasn't entirely false. Finally, he blushed here. I had seen her body and I was attracted to her all right, he said, a little flustered. Amaterasu stared at him before giggling loudly, causing Naruto to blush harder and turn away from her. He whispered quietly, besides, I wanted to know what she saw in a worthless human like me. She froze at that and stared at him in shock. Amaterasu's eyes suddenly became soft. You have to ask, she said, getting a slightly curious look from Naruto. Hikari had never outright come and told him what she liked in him, so he was still curious, although he no longer thought of himself as worthless. You're loyal to a fault. You detest rapists and see women as equal, or maybe even slightly higher than, men. You could easily love 10 or more women and still have enough heart to go around. And you survived hell on earth for years without any emotional support. If you aren't husband material, I don't know who is, she said smiling. Naruto chuckled, but his eyes shone with unshed tears. Thanks Ami-chan. I appreciate that. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know okay, he said. Amaterasu giggled, okay she said smiling. Suddenly Naruto found his head being pressed into 2 fleshy globes. You can take her out on a date. Kami knows she needs to stop being a prude and get laid. Hikari said from behind Naruto. Amaterasu flushed bright red and screeched, Hikari. Naruto was blushing as well but Hikari just giggled and said, you didn't object so that's a yes. Amaterasu started sputtering, and Naruto's grin suddenly outshone Hikari's. Say, there's a new restaurant opening in 2 weeks. I'll take you there, say 7 p.m., he asked, getting a shocked look from both females, even as Hikari moved to stand in front of them. One from Hikari because she hadn't expected him to actually join in, and one from Amaterasu because she suddenly had that heartwarming feeling again. So, Amaterasu did the one thing her brain could think to do at the moment, nod her head yes. Naruto smiled brightly, great. Dress well, I'll be sure to impress, he said before disappearing in a shunshin. Hikari blinked olishly and Amaterasu just said, did I just agree to a date with your fiancé? Suddenly, Amaterasu had a bad feeling. She turned to see Hikari with a shit-eating grin on her face. She was suddenly glumped by the happy fox demon as she yelled, welcome to the family. Amaterasu immediately pushed Hikari away. Look, I don't know about that, she said, gaining a rather sad look from Hikari. It's not that he isn't attractive or anything, but I just don't like rushing into things okay, she said. Hikari nodded, fine, fine. But, she gained a foxy smirk, Naruto-kun will get you, she said sing-songily before she disappeared too. Amaterasu just shook her head and sighed before she shunshined away as well. Author Tenshi style, flashback no jutsu, Kai. Naruto's group stood still as they registered Kami's words. Since I don't wish to explain all the gods' forms, I will explain the important ones here. Kami and Yami are twins but Kami has white hair and eyes while Yami has black hair and eyes. Ryujin is about 5 feet 11 inches and has silver hair and black eyes. He's mostly wearing black with a silver haori. Inari, just think a red-headed mischievous person. Susanoo is as tall as Ryujin and has cloudy gray hair, with electric blue eyes. The girls all snapped out of it as Naruto sighed and shook his head, great. Even Ami-chan is joining in on pranking me now, he said throwing his hands in the air. Hikari looked at Naruto and deadpanned, if this is her idea of a prank, then she's even better than you, she said. Naruto's shoulders slumped down, why can't things ever be easy, he asked with sad, yet slightly teasing, voice. Amaterasu gave him a guilty look and went to her seat amongst the gods. The rest of the girls quickly took up supportive positions behind him. Ryujin chuckled, because if things were easy, it wouldn't be so much fun, he said. Naruto sighed and looked at Kami, okay, so what do you want, he asked, surprising most of the gods. Most humans would start bowing and begging forgiveness in front of Kami. Kami chuckled, didn't Amaterasu explain? You are here to take the immortality trials, she said. Naruto shook his head, I knew that, but what do you want with me? Because I know that you would not offer immortality to just anyone and I'm guessing there's certain reasons for you to allow me to take these trials, he said, eyeing Kami and Yami warily. Yami chuckled, you certainly are a perceptive one. I suppose it would be best to start at the beginning. Hikari-chan has already told you about Orochimaru. What she didn't know is that, the curse marks are actually a bastardized version of the god's avatar mark, which is granted to certain individuals by a god. This mark allows a god to have a servant on Earth, however, there can only be a certain number of avatars on Earth at any given time. Since Orochimaru has been marking people, the god's marks have disappeared, meaning we have no power on Earth, she explained. Naruto nodded, okay, so you have no power on Earth. But how does that affect me, he asked. Kami stepped in here, currently, only Susanoo has an avatar mark left to give. Myself and Yami took an oath to never give marks because they could throw the whole world into chaos upon doing so. Normally, as Yami said, Orochimaru's mark would override a god's mark, however, only a god is supposed to be able to remove another avatar mark. This makes gods generally immune to marks unless they consciously accept the mark from another, she said. With me so far, she asked. Naruto nodded again. So Orochimaru, I'm assuming from his time as Orochi no Yamada, is able to override your marks because he used to be immortal and he is immune to a mark himself, he said. Kami nodded, yes. However, you have done what is impossible for a human. You have removed a mark, even if it is the bastardized version combined with that strange toxin he uses, and this makes you very special. By Kami law, you are now considered to be among god status. However, we cannot allow such a thing, so we came up with the immortality trials as a way to ensure that you can be allowed to join us, she said. Evarayon was silent for a moment until Hannah spoke up. So you mean the trials will make him a god? She asked in a subdued voice. Kami shook her head, not in so many words. If he passes, he will be granted demigod status. This makes him immortal. Upon his death, he, and any of his wives/lovers that he wishes, would ascend to be under the command of the patron god who supports him in life. That is the case normally, however, since he can remove the marks, we have decided to make him specifically the demigod in charge of avatar marks. Essentially, he will be a lesser god upon his death, she explained. Anko whistled, impressive. I knew you were destined for great things, but godhood? Damn, I'm glad I'm with you now, she said, smirking at Naruto. Naruto smirked, yeah. However, you still have yet to explain what my job would be while I'm alive, he stated. Yami chuckled again, like I said, very perceptive. Since you can remove avatar marks, you will be immune to Orochimaru's ability to remove avatar marks. Meaning that you can be an avatar and your mark will not fade, if Orochimaru attempts to mark another, she explained. Simply put, your job will be to, eventually, track down and kill Orochimaru. The avatar mark will simply be our way of supporting you and giving you both help and, maybe, a few missions of our own, she stated as Naruto nodded his head in acknowledgement. That is, assuming you pass the trials, she added. Naruto nodded, that's fine by me. Planning on killing Oro team anyways, he said before turning his gaze to Kami, so then let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What do these trials entail and what will happen should I fail? He asked. Well, there will be a test for your honor and courage, by Ryujin, she said, motioning to the silver-haired, black-eyed man who smirked fearfully, a test for your intelligence and cunning, by Inari, she continued, motioning to the red-haired and red-eyed man with a mischievous smile, and, a test of your heart to determine if you are worthy of an avatar mark, by Susanoo, she finished, motioning to the black-haired, stormy-eyed man next to Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi, who stared at Naruto with piercing eyes. If you fail, you will probably die. However, if you live, your memory, and every mortal's, will be erased and you will not remember this, she said. Naruto nodded. That is reasonable, he said before finding himself on the wrong end of three women's attempts to keep him from attempting the trials. He sighed and glared at them and they fell quiet. Look, I know you don't want me to risk it, but, come on girls, immortality? How often does one get offered that, he said, gaining contemplative looks from his loves. He suddenly smirked foxily, besides, that would be the biggest bitch slap to Oro team, he said with a chuckle. Anko's eyes immediately brightened and she grabbed him before kissing him deeply. You better come out alive and immortal or I'll kill you myself, she said, smirking. Naruto nodded dumbly before finding himself on the receiving end of yet another kiss, this time with a canine scent filling his nostrils. You still owe me some dates before we get married, mister. Hannah smirked. Besides, I think I could get used to being with you forever, she said, before looking behind and suddenly letting go. Naruto stumbled for a second before he found himself being kissed again. This time, of course, he noticed the fiery red hair of his demoness. You become immortal or I'll manipulate your genes until you're so horny that it'll take 3 hours before you're flaccid, understood, she said sweetly. Naruto just nodded nervously. Being horny for 3 hours straight would not be a good thing for his health, he was sure of that. Amaterasu watched with set eyes. She was actually rather attracted to the blonde boy. She wanted to wish him luck like that too, but she was slightly afraid of Hikari's wrath from choosing him for these trials in the first place. That, and she didn't want him to get hurt either. She decided to simply observe, and not ruin their moment. She only hoped that she could make it up to him, and them, later. Naruto stepped back and comically shook his head fast before smiling broadly and looking at Ryujin. When do we start? I gotta kick your ass first, right? He said. Ryujin smirked. My ass? Boy, you're gonna be a sore when I'm done with you. As to your question, now, he said before both beings disappeared in a flash of silver. Unknown location, Ryujin and Naruto. Naruto and Ryujin arrived and Naruto immediately began to take in his surroundings. They were on a large white tiled arena platform that was easily a mile wide. Naruto turned back to Ryujin, who smirked. "Welcome to my personal playground, boy. In here, I control everything," he said. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "How am I supposed to beat you if you control everything?" he asked. Ryujin chuckled. "Nobody ever said the test was to beat me. No, the test is set by me and I don't feel like telling you what you have to do to pass," he stated with his arms crossed. Naruto scowled at this, but thought for a moment before asking, "Okay then, what exactly will we be doing here?" he asked, deciding not to run his mouth and actually use his brain. Ryujin smirked. "There's the Naruto I was looking for. Think before you speak or act," he said. He started to pace back and forth in front of Naruto. "Let me explain the rules and stipulations to this test. First off, you're going to be fighting me until I tell you to stop. Secondly, taijutsu or weapons only, no thrown weapons, however kunous will be allowed to block my scimitars, if I use them. The last, and most important, rule, I have enabled you to reach the full potential your mind holds," he said, gaining a confused look from his blonde-haired opponent. "Full potential my mind holds? What the heck does that mean?" Naruto asked, thoroughly confused. Ryujin smirked again. "I'll only give you a hint. Mind is more important here than body," he said. Naruto was still confused but decided to just nod and drop into his Uriken, back fist, stance. "Good, you're not wasting any time. Neither will I," he stated before he blurred forward and slammed into Naruto's defenses like a bull. Naruto was hard-pressed to defend against the silver juggernaut and he quickly decided that evading the dragon god's attacks was the best course of action. He was able to somewhat stall Ryujin by doing this, but he couldn't hit the man to save his life. Unfortunately, his life was on the line and he needed to find a way around the man's insane speed and style or he would be in big trouble. Kami's court, same time. Kami had made a TV-like screen that allowed the gods, and guests, to view the fight. Several gods were betting on wins and losses, whilst Naruto's girls cheered him on. Amaterasu sat in her seat next to her sister and brother, Tsukuyomi and Susanoo respectively. She was cheering Naruto on, but quietly because of her involvement in this affair. She knew she should have mentioned the trials before they had happened, but she just hadn't wanted to make Naruto worry about something that he couldn't change. That, and trial contestants weren't supposed to know about their nomination until the trials themselves. She glanced at Hikari, who was loudly cheering Naruto on, and cringed. She would pay the price for not telling her friend about this. She sighed and went back to silently cheering Naruto on. Over with the girls, Hana noticed Amaterasu's disposition and frowned. She didn't like Amaterasu's secrecy about this, but she also didn't believe that she meant anything bad by it. She turned to Hikari. "Hikari-chan," she said, gaining both Anko's and Hikari's attention, "what should we do about Amaterasu?" she asked. Hikari frowned. "I don't like her keeping secrets from us like this. I suppose we will have to think of something," she replied. Anko smirked mean-like. "I say we strap her down and let Naruto-kun have his way with her, after we ride him, of course," she said. Hikari chuckled. "That's a good punishment. However, I was thinking more along the lines of something permanent," she said with a foxy smirk. Suddenly Hana gained a grin that no one had seen before. "You girls remember that she has a date set with him, huh?" she said, getting nods from her fellow Naruto lovers. "Well, how about we find out when their next date is, after that one, because it's too soon, and get her all hot and bothered for like a week before the date. Hell, we could totally spike her food and stuff with aphrodisiacs. She will be so horny that she won't have any choice but to jump Naruto-kun's bones. And, since Hikari wanted something permanent, we get her to marry Naruto-kun because she slept with him," she said, smirking like Naruto did after a well-planned prank. Hikari's eyes brightened and she quickly squealed and glomped Hana. "Good one. Okay, so that's the plan?" she asked, getting nods from her partners in torture. "Okay. We will start after Naruto-kun passes these trials," she said. The three schemers smiled and turned back to the screen just in time to see Naruto smirk devilishly. Time warp, before the Amaterasu plan, with Naruto. Naruto had spent the past 5 minutes trying to not get creamed by Ryujin. Ryujin, on the other hand, was getting bored and kept trying to get Naruto to step it up a notch. He threw another punch at Naruto and knocked him back before sighing in disappointment. What a waste. To think you're supposed to be the chosen of the Anjuin, he asked. He put a finger to his chin. Maybe I should offer to let Hikari be with a real man, he said. Naruto immediately rushed forward and tried to strike the dragon god. Ryujin easily redirected and avoided all of Naruto's strikes. Naruto growled and redoubled his efforts, going slightly faster. Ryujin smirked seeing this. Come on, stop trying to hit me, and hit me, he half yelled at Naruto. Yeah, I used a Matrix reference. Big hoop. Wanna fight about it? Ryujin suddenly found himself on the wrong end of a very fast and vicious assault from the Kyuubigen hierarchy and ended up getting struck in the chest and flying back about 10 feet. Naruto stared in shock at his fist. I am not that strong. Wait a minute. He said to reach the full potential my mind holds, and mind over body? Let's test it, he thought before he suddenly felt his foot become 10 times heavier than the rest of his body. Ryujin smirked and said, enough of the kiddie games. It's time to step up or die. Naruto watched as Ryujin disappeared and a cloud of dust appeared around him in a circle. Like Lee's fight with Gaara, suddenly, everyone watched as a line of destruction raged towards Naruto. It was Ryujin, running so fast he busted up the arena. Naruto smirked devilishly and Ryujin noticed Naruto's muscles expand and then shrink back down several times. Naruto swiftly threw a punch forward and everyone watched in anticipation as his fist met with Ryujin's and a crater appeared around the two combatants. Ryujin smirked, seems you've figured it out. Let's see if you can keep up, he said before disappearing again. Naruto smirked right back, oh. It's on, he roared as he too disappeared. Kami's court, same time. Everyone was gaping, well except Kami and Yami. Cool. Anko suddenly shouted as she watched Naruto start to fight with the dragon god. Hikari chuckled, damn right. I knew he'd beat Ryujin's ass, she said pumping her arm in support of her future mate. Kami chuckled as well, indeed, he is quite the human, she said smiling. There were several other comments made, mostly positive, although some gods were miffed at losing their bets. Several minutes later, however, Ryujin and a battered Naruto appeared in the court. Ryujin smirked and said, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze has passed the test of courage and honor. Naruto looked at Ryujin with a curious expression. That didn't really test courage or honor. Why would you pass me without testing me for real, he asked. Ryujin chuckled, it may not have been a test in your eyes. However, I tested your courage when I told you that I controlled everything. Even though you asked how you could beat me, you never, once, entertained the thought that you would back down or run away. That shows tremendous courage. Your honor was tested with each strike of your fist against mine. I was able to see parts of your past and I know you would never abandon your code of honor for anything less than your death. You passed my test, Naruto-san, and I am honored to say so, he said bowing slightly to the young man. Naruto bowed back, I enjoyed our fight. Thank you for the hint though, he replied. Ryujin smirked, no problem Naruto, he turned and headed back to his seat, waving his hand in the air behind him. Pass the rest or I'll resurrect you just to throw you to your future mates, he said over his shoulder, causing Naruto to pale and nod furiously. Kami chuckled, I see you already understand just how dangerous a scorned woman can be. With good reason, she said with a smirk. Naruto just gave her a, do you think I'm a moron, look which caused Kami to laugh. She shook her head as her laughing died down and said, I believe it is time for Inari's challenge. Assuming Naruto-kun doesn't want to wait. Naruto nodded and the mischievous-looking redhead suddenly appeared in front of him. Pleasure to meet ya Naruto. I've always been a fan of your pranks. Man, the looks on your victims' faces, priceless, he said smiling the whole time. Naruto smiled broadly, really? Well, I have this one prank I need to plan. He said. Inari's face practically glowed, hee. Tell you what kid, you pass my test and I'll help you with that prank, he said, causing Hikari and Amaterasu to pale. Amaterasu stepped forward, no now let's not be hasty. Couldn't you just? I don't know, give him some secret only you know, she said, desperately trying to keep Naruto from getting help from the only person who could possibly outdo the prank master from hell. Inari put a finger to his chin, you have a point. Okay, new deal. You can have my help with the prank or the secret. You pass and I'll even give you a hint to the secret, he said smirking. Naruto nodded, done. When do we start? He asked. Inari snapped his fingers and Naruto felt re-energized. Right now, prank master from hell. Oh, and try not to destroy all my playthings, will ya? He said as Naruto disappeared in a white flash. Unknown location. Naruto blinked his eyes to rid himself of the spots in his vision and looked around. All behind and to the sides of him was a white plain. In front, a large wall that seemed to go on for miles with a single entrance that split several feet in. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Welp, guess that's where I gotta go, he said as he walked into the maze. He had only taken about 10 steps in when it split to the right and left. Naruto looked down both corridors and noticed they both curved again quite soon. He shrugged and closed his eyes before spinning around 3 times and walking forward, to the right path. Naruto walked through many more twists and turns before he came across a large open plain. He was immediately on guard and kept his senses alert as he slowly walked forward and kept his eyes peeled looking through the grass and around the area so he didn't get a nasty surprise. He noticed some movement in the grass and tensed, waiting for something to happen. His eyes watched as the grass kept parting closer and closer until a small white bunny rabbit hopped out and looked at Naruto cutely. Naruto sighed. Hello there, little one. You don't know the way out, do you? He asked. The bunny seemed to giggle. Of course I do. But that doesn't mean I'm going to tell you, the bunny said. Although Naruto heard it, it was like when he hears Hikari when she's in his head. Naruto tensed and immediately began to scan his surroundings. Noticing no one was around, he turned back to the bunny who seemed to be pouting. It's not very nice to ignore someone, especially when you're the first guest I've had in decades, the bunny said again. Naruto eyed the bunny warily. Well then, sorry. It's not every day you meet a talking bunny, he said. The bunny seemed to nod. True enough. So, you are here for the immortality trials? Or is Inari-sama just messing with poor mortals again, it said. Naruto shook his head. Immortality trials. He said. So, how can I get the way out of here from you, he asked. The bunny seemed to chuckled. I'll tell you, if you can find my weak spot, it said as it started to grow. Naruto's eyes went wide as he watched this cute little rabbit turn into a rabbit the size of Kyuubi. Naruto quickly backpedaled and noticed a group of very strange knights. They all had different tabards on, but they looked like they were riding horses, without the horses, and their squires were clapping coconuts together. Naruto nearly sweat dropped when their apparent leader, and a king by the crown on his head, yelled, Great Scott! It's the killer rabbit! Run for it, boys, he yelled as they all pretended to run away on their fake horses. Naruto did sweat drop when the rabbit slammed its paw on top of them. Okay, that was pathetic. Naruto stated before turning back to the rabbit. Kami's court, same time. Everyone was deadpanning as they watched the scene, well except for Hikari, who was drooling and muttering, dinner. Kami looked at Inari. What the hell is that? She asked. Inari chuckled. Why, that, my good girl, is a Monty Python and the Holy Grail reference, he said, causing more sweat drops among the gods and guests. Susanoo, however, was nodding sagely. Good reference. But why did you make the rabbit so big? He asked. Inari chuckled again. Because it'd make Hikari-chan drool, of course, he said, pointing to the nearly comatose Hikari who had a puddle of drool under her mouth. Amaterasu sighed and walked over before shutting Hikari's mouth. Control yourself. What would Naruto-kun think? She asked, snapping Hikari out of her funk. Hikari chuckled nervously. Sorry, she said. Yami chuckled as she watched the fight. Your mate is very good. He's avoided that rabbit for nearly 10 minutes now, she commented, turning everyone's attention back to the screen. Rabbit plane, same time. Naruto dodged yet another paw strike from the giant rabbit and cursed. Damn thing is fast, and its size makes its strikes very powerful. So its legs can't be the weak spot. It's even snapped at me a few times, so its head is also safe to count out. He thought before he had to dodge the rabbit's teeth again. Come on, Naruto. If you don't figure out my weak spot, you'll die in here, the rabbit said. Naruto growled and stepped back before rapidly making a seal and yelling out, Heido no Sanjusan, Sakasui. Way of Destruction number 33, Blue Fire, crash down. A bright yellow beam of fire blasted the rabbit and caused it to dodge to the side but still suffer a burn on its right front leg. That hurt, you little shit, the rabbit growled out as it attempted to stand back up. Naruto took this quick moment to think again. This is supposed to be a test of intelligence and cunning. So let's try solving this mentally. Its legs and head are safe, the body is too wide an area. The internal organs are too numerous and, while he is a prankster, he is honorable according to Hikari. Glad I took the time out to ask about all the celestial beings. Naruto thought happily. He looked back to the rabbit and noticed its burn mark starting to heal, although it still couldn't move yet. Good, so if its body is safe then, the only spot left is its tail. He thought before smirking. The killer rabbit growled as it finally stood up. I'm going to get you for that, you little bastard, it said. Naruto chuckled. Your weak spot is your tail, he said, gaining a pissed-off look from the rabbit. Damn it, it mentally yelled at Naruto, you are correct. Very well, the answer you seek is in the clouds, it said before smirking and disappearing. Naruto stared in shock. What the hell kind of answer is that? He roared at the non-existent rabbit. There was no reply and Naruto settled for groaning in frustration and walking toward the other end of the plain, where there was another entrance to the maze, all the while muttering something about bunny soup. Kami's court, same time. Kami shook her head. I should have had someone more stable test his intelligence, she said. Inari smirked. Now Kami-chan, just because I love a good joke doesn't mean I'm unstable, he said cheerfully. Yami snorted. Yeah, and I'm the queen of butterflies and angels, she said. The god and two goddesses continued to banter back and forth for several minutes, eventually causing many of the other gods to join in as well. However, 5 people were busy with something more important, so they did not join in on the crazy train. Hikari sighed as she watched Naruto walk off and turned to Amaterasu, who immediately realized she should have gone back to her seat and prepared herself for the verbal lashing she was about to receive. Hikari opened her mouth like she was going to yell, you are going to apologize for keeping this from Naruto when he gets done. When you go on your date, you will dress nicely and you will hang on him like a girlfriend would. I won't force you to sleep with him then, but you better show him a good time, she said calmly. Amaterasu blinked foolishly and Hana stepped up to her. When your date is over, you are going to make sure that he wants another one. If he doesn't ask, you will. Understood, she said. Amaterasu slowly nodded and was about to speak when Anko stepped in and gave her a slap across the face. That was for not telling us. We aren't mad. We are disappointed, Amaterasu-san. You will stand with us and you're going to cheer him on. Got it, she said. Amaterasu nodded again. She may be a goddess, but these girls were her friends. Despite the rules, she should have given them some warning. I'm sorry. I'll do as you say, she said softly. Hikari smiled and hugged her. Good, then all is forgiven, she said happily. Amaterasu looked at her in shock. You can't be serious, she said surprised. Hana quickly joined in the hug. Yeah, just do as we said and it's all fine, she said smiling. Well, that and we will rig your second date, but you don't need to know that. She thought. Anko squealed and joined in the hug, Naruto's cheerleaders. Group hug, she yelled, causing all the girls to smile and start laughing, Amaterasu smiling more broadly than her friends. They all turned back to the screen just in time to see Naruto contort in ways that shouldn't be possible just to avoid spikes coming out of the wall. Maze corridor, same time. Naruto's sweat dropped as he had dodged the spikes by becoming a living pretzel. You have got to be kidding me, he said as the spikes retracted. He sighed and relaxed his muscles as he walked around the next bend and found himself in a strange circular room with 2 openings, one behind him and one right in front of him past the bed? Yep, that was a king-sized bed all right. Naruto thought as he walked into the room, keeping himself alert. All of a sudden his instincts went haywire as something came flying through the air at him. Yahoo, Naruto-kun, a female said before all Naruto could see was a yellow sweater. He was suddenly well aware of the fact his head was in between 2 heavenly pillows that were as firm as they were soft. His hands shot up and began pushing against them, but it only resulted in him groping the wondrous breasts that were currently suffocating him. Naruto suddenly felt 4 very powerful keys hit him and realized what would happen if he decided to stick around. He mentally sighed and suddenly the woman was holding a log which she stared at for a moment before saying, "That wasn't very nice, Naruto-kun." She pouted as she turned to the side of the room where Naruto froze in a running pose. Naruto chuckled nervously. Who are you?" he asked. The rather petite woman, with breasts as large as Tsunade's, giggled. "I'm Kurama," she said. Naruto smiled, again nervously as he just knew his girls were watching him. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Kurama-san," he said, eyes still darting around nervously. Kurama pouted cutely. "You look like you wanna run away," she half-whined. Naruto winced as he never did like hearing disappointment in a woman's voice. "It's not that, I just need to finish this challenge," he said. Kurama slowly walked towards him, making sure to sway her body and let her breasts jiggle with each step as she spoke. "Why's that?" Couldn't you just stay here with me? I'm sure we could play some games and have some fun, she said as she reached him and began to lean forward to catch him in a kiss. Naruto quickly stepped away as he felt the 4 keys from earlier resurface and said, look, not to be rude, but I don't have time to play with you, he said as he inched his way towards the exit. Kami's court, when Naruto entered Kuruma's room. The entirety of the court was quiet as they watched him enter, and many of the males in the room silently seethed at seeing the boy get glumped like that. However, 4 women were very pissed and some of their ki was being directed at Inari, who began to sweat nervously. While all 4 had the similar thought of, that bitch best back off, Anko also thought, Naruto-kun should only be pressed into my breasts like that, before giggling perversely at that thought. Amaterasu turned to Inari and glared, after Naruto separated himself from Kuruma of course. Who is that? She growled out. Inari chuckled, having regained his bravado. That, my dear Okamai, is a Razario vampire reference, he said happily. Yami chuckled as she watched Kuruma put the moves on Naruto. A girl after my own heart, she said smiling. Inari nodded, of course. She is a succubus after all, he said. Kami shook her head. I knew I should have chosen someone else, she said as he rested her head in her hands before feeling the girl's ki again. When Kuruma tried to kiss Naruto, the girls flared their ki again. They watched as he began to escape and nodded in contentment. No one was getting a move on their man without their permission. Kuruma's room, same time. Naruto chuckled nervously as he dodged yet another Kuruma missile as he called her jumping attempts to kiss him. He sighed and watched her jump at him again only for him to shunshin behind her and quickly make a cage bunshin. He hung into a small rock and watched as the clone got tackled and looked at him over Kuruma's shoulder and mouthed thank you, before Naruto quickly ran out of the room. Naruto was a good 15 feet down 3 more turns before he was stopped as his clone dispelled and showed him that Kuruma had been able to kiss him repeatedly. He could swear he felt those keys again, and nearly got him undressed before it dispersed. He shivered as he really did feel those keys and quickly made his way down the hall, so as to assure his future mates didn't kill him and only maimed him horribly. Naruto sighed as he spent the next 3 hours dodging strange traps and some gags. He was getting bored when he noticed another room up ahead. He simply steeled himself and walked into the room only to see a table with 2 chairs and a chess set. Now Naruto was no expert at playing chess, but he could play shogi and go, checkers, chess, and backgammon all rather well. He looked around until he heard a voice, "So you are my opponent," came the slightly mechanical voice of 1-0. Naruto turned back to the chess table only to see a man dressed in a dark blue cape and suit combo, along with a strange helmet. He raised an eyebrow. "Your opponent?" Naruto asked. The man nodded, "Yes. My name is Zero. Would you care for a game?" he asked. Naruto nodded and sat down. "Name's Naruto. And sure, a game sounds fun right about now," Naruto said as he moved his pawn out. Zero made a move and Naruto silently contemplated his next move. He moved out another pawn. "So what do you do?" he asked. Zero moved another piece. "I'm a leader of a group of fighters who fight against the tyranny of Britannia." "And you?" he answered and asked. Naruto moved yet another piece and said, "I'm a ninja for my home village of Konoha," he answered. This sparked off a series of questions and answers among the two. Kami court, same time. Everyone was silent and Inari was looking around disappointed. Yami finally got annoyed and said, "Okay Inari. Who is this guy?" she asked. Inari smiled brightly. "That, my dear bad girl, is a Code Geass reference," he said. Yami sighed. "Lemme guess, Zero is a genius huh?" she asked. Inari smiled again. "Yep," he said cheerfully. Hikari pulled a giant mallet from somewhere and smacked Inari over his head. "Quit making all these anime and movie references," she yelled as Inari was flattened into a pancake on the ground. Amaterasu shook her head. "Hikari-chan, don't kill Inari baka. He controls the area Naruto-kun is in after all," she said. Hikari chuckled sheepishly. "Oops," she said. Hana shook her head as well. "Hikari-chan doesn't think before she acts very much does she?" she asked, gaining shakes of their heads from both Amaterasu and Anko. Hikari blushed sheepishly and the rest of the gods just shook their heads. They all turned back to the screen just as Naruto yelled, "Hey look, there's the Emperor." Zero's chess room. The past 30 minutes had been a back and forth question and answer while they played a rather rousing game of chess. However, Zero was winning and had stated that he would not allow Naruto to continue should he lose the chess match. Naruto glared at Zero as he said, You lose in 10 moves. Naruto sighed, perhaps. Hey look, there's the Emperor, he yelled. Zero immediately turned around and looked around. Behind his back, Naruto quickly turned the chessboard around and sat there like nothing was wrong. Zero turned around and Naruto could feel his glare. You turned the board around. That was underhanded, he said threateningly. I have no idea what you're talking about. Naruto said innocently. Zero's eye slot opened and he said, you're not going to make a fool of me. His eye started to glow with a weird chevron signal. Lelich 6 Britannia commands you, answer my question, he ordered. Naruto's face suddenly became blank and he answered in monotone, yes. Zero's visible eye twitched. You're faking, he stated. Naruto suddenly chuckled, of course I am. I'm Naruto fucking Uzumaki Namikaze. Nobody commands me, damn it, he said, before feeling something was wrong and immediately added, except my future mates. Naruto relaxed as he felt that sense of foreboding disappear. Zero scowled, fine, you win. Get out of here, he half yelled as he sat back and watched as Naruto just shook his head and walked out of the room with a smile on his face. Naruto, then, spent the next 3 hours making more twists and turns through the maze before finding himself at a fork in the road. To his right, led to a wide open space. In front of him, led to more twists and turns through the maze. Naruto looked around and shrugged before walking towards the opening. When he reached it, his eye began to twitch and the people watching could see his chakra visibly manifest around him. He roared as he looked at the plain white area in front of him. He was back to where he started. He immediately began to look around and finally grew few up and said, fuck it, before pulling out a tri-blade kunai. The girls in Kami's court all gasped and Susanoo stared intently at the blade. Naruto threw it in the air and disappeared with a shout of, Hiraishin no Jutsu. Flying Thunder God technique, Naruto appeared next to the kunai and grabbed it before throwing it again, this time clearing the maze's wall. He disappeared in another flash and landed atop the wall. He looked around and his face immediately twisted into rage. That bastard, he yelled and he threw the kunai yet again and reappeared halfway through the maze. He grabbed the kunai and threw it again, this time landing in a closed-off space, with an open exit right in front of him. I don't really have an abstract way to say this, so there was no way to get to the exit from inside the maze. You had to climb or walk around the maze to get out. Suddenly, Naruto was confronted by a lion-like animal with the head of a human. You have reached the end and now must answer my riddle to exit the maze ninja, it said. Naruto scoffed and held up his hand, like hell I do. That bastard owes me for making this stupid maze without an exit. Odamura's non. Great ball spiraling sphere, he yelled as he slammed it into the Sphinx and caused the creature to fly back and be knocked unconscious. Naruto swiftly walked out of the maze and disappeared in a white flash. Kami's court, same time. The various gods in attendance were very surprised at Inari's action and Yami shook her head. That was underhanded, Inari, she said. Amaterasu glared at him. No, that was downright cruel, she said, being backed by her fellow Naruto lovers. Inari chuckled nervously as he saw Naruto disp pair. Now, there's no need to be angry. He did pass after all, he said. Naruto suddenly appeared and looked around the room before making a beeline for Inari yelling, you. He quickly grabbed the god and lifted him off the floor. You better have a damn good explanation or reward. Otherwise you're going to be androgynous when I'm done with you, he roared. Inari started to sweat and he leaned into Naruto's ear and whispered something that caused Naruto to drop him in shock. Naruto regained his bearings and turned his glare back to Inari before saying, tell me or else. Inari quickly nodded and Naruto whipped out a notepad, wrote down a few notes, and quickly sealed it away. You're damn lucky, Inari-san. Next time, I won't be so forgiving, he said, glaring again. Everyone stared at Naruto in shock. What could he have possibly said that would make you forgive him like that? Anko yelled. Naruto waved his hand dismissively. I'll tell you later. After I make sure what he told me is true, he stated. No one noticed the slight blush he had. Kami simply sighed. That's enough. Naruto has passed the intelligence and cunning portion of the exams. All that is left is the heart. Susanoo, if you would, she said, motioning to the god. Susanoo nodded and stepped forward. I'll be testing you last, brat. If I don't deem you worthy, you will die, so prepare yourself, he said. Naruto gained a serious visage. I'm ready whenever you are, Storm God, he said. Susanoo smirked. Good, he stated before he touched Naruto's head and time seemed to freeze. Susanoo's mindscape. Naruto looked around only to notice he was on a beach with a storm raging out at sea. He felt oddly at peace as he watched the storm rage and the sea move. "Beautiful, is it not?" came Suzanu's voice from behind him. Naruto spun around and faced the calm god. "Relax, Naruto-kun. You have already passed my test. We are simply here to talk away from prying eyes," he stated. Naruto looked at him warily. "How did I pass your test so easily?" he asked. Susanoo laughed. "Easily? You call a childhood of hell easy?" he asked with a raised eyebrow, getting a flash of recognition in Naruto's eyes. "I have always watched you, Naruto. Your father impressed me greatly. I even gifted him with the idea of the Hiraishin, although he named us after Raijin, and the bastard never lets me forget it," he stated, surprising Naruto. You watched my childhood?" he asked quietly. Susanoo nodded and sighed. "I could not interfere. I sincerely wish I could have, but alas, Kami rules forbade it and I had to bide my time to get you here," he said. Naruto frowned but nodded. Amaterasu had often cursed at Kami rules. "So, what did you wish to talk about?" he asked. Susanoo smiled. "First of all, I will be marking you. You already have all the necessary elements for storm release, so I will leave you with some jutsu for that. In addition, your affinities will be stronger with my mark and they will mesh easier, so the release itself shouldn't take too long to master. I'm sure you're wondering why I'm the only one with a mark left," he said questioningly, getting a nod from Naruto. "Well, I never found anyone worthy. Your father came close but he didn't have the emotional fortitude you do." "Understand," he said. Naruto nodded again. "So I'll be getting storm release? Will this affect my children? And what about my bloodline?" he asked. Susanoo nodded. "Yes to the first. Yes to the second, as in they will inherit it. And your bloodline will be unaffected," he stated. After a happy nod from Naruto, he continued, "Now, second, I will be altering your body to make you a demigod. You would normally gain traits associated with me, but I do not want that, so you will be special, and this will tie into the last thing I want you to do for me," he stated. Naruto looked at him curiously and Susanoo smirked. "I will be making your attributes more wolf-like," he said. Naruto stared at him for a moment. "Wolf-like? Okay, but what is this thing you want me to do?" he asked. Susanoo smirked. "Well, Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu are my sisters, you see. Tsukuyomi and I have had lovers in the past, but Ami-chan has had, well, none," he stated. "My third and final thing to talk about, and my request, is to make my sister stop being such a prude," he said, gaining a shocked look from Naruto. Wait, back up, rewind. You want me to sleep with Ami-chan?" he asked incredulously. Susanoo nodded. "I've seen the way you two interact and I believe you are the one to break her out of being so, well, non-impulsive. She's always considered everything before acting and I think you would be great to break her out of it. Not to mention getting laid would really help her stop being so uptight. Your body changes because she would find it more appealing, and I know your other lovers will enjoy it as well. Oh, did I mention you will also be able to transform into a wolf at will?" he asked. Naruto smiled. "So, basically, you will give me a whole body makeover and want me to hook up with your sister?" he asked. Susanoo nodded. "So? What do you say?" he asked. Naruto thought for a moment before smirking foxily. "Make the fur golden and keep it soft and cuddly for my girls and you got yourself a deal," he said, extending his hand in agreement. Susanoo smiled and grabbed Naruto's hand. "Good, oh, and I'll be aging you a few years as well. Good luck," he stated as they both faded from view. Kami's court, 5 seconds after Susanoo touched Naruto's head. Naruto began to shine brightly as his changes took place. He grew to a rather nice height of 5 feet 11 inches and his muscles seemed to expand before becoming slightly more compact. The girls all stared in awe as the light died down and they immediately sported blushes as they all took in the new Naruto. While he was muscular before, now it was more compact. His eyes still held that bright blue, but it now had a slit pupil. His hair had grown slightly and 2 bangs framed his face with a small mane of hair behind his head. His fingers and toes were slightly clawed. The last thing they noticed, and first thing they acted on, was the 2 golden wolf-like ears on his head and the golden tail swishing around behind him. The 4 girls yelled, "Kawaii," before quickly glomping Naruto as Anko and Hikari each took an ear while Hana and Amaterasu began to pet his tail. Naruto smiled brightly and began to purr, much to his embarrassment, and said, "While I like the attention, girls, maybe we could save this for later," he asked. The girls all blushed and stepped away muttering apologies. Kami chuckled, good, you have passed the trials Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Your primary mission is to track down and kill Orochimaru, but first, get strong enough to do so. Amaterasu shall be your official liaison, since she seems so interested in you, she said, giving Amaterasu a knowing gaze. Amaterasu simply blushed and caused a ripple of chuckles to go across the room. May your journey be fruitful and may your steps always be blessed, she said before waving her hand, and the group disappeared again. Kami turned to Ryujin, who stepped forward. Ryujin, I have a job for you, surprising all the gods present. She hadn't set forth a task for Ryujin in nearly 300 years. Ryujin bowed. What is your command, my lady? He asked. Kami's face turned serious. Find that boy's mother. I have looked into the past and she was sent into a personal dimension. You are the most versed in traveling between worlds and I want her found ASAP. Understood, she said. Ryujin nodded and bowed. I shall start immediately. Good day, he said before disappearing in a silver flash. Kami smiled. It's good to see someone so ardent about their work, she said happily. Yamki chuckled at that and looked to Susanoo, who stood near his seat. So when do you think they will learn about him being 18, she asked. Susanoo chuckled and raised his hand, counting down from 5. When he reached 0, they could all hear, Nanny, followed by, Sweet he's legal, causing them all to sweat drop. Hikari glanced at Naruto as he sat with the rest of his girls. It was 2 days after Naruto had taken the trials and passed, with flying colors. She looked back to the picnic basket filled with sushi and a jar of sake. Tomorrow was Amaterasu's date with Naruto and she had no intention of letting him go without reminding him who the alpha female was around here. She had planned this late lunch for later today and she giggled as she thought of what she had in store. Hopefully, Naruto would play along. They had moved into the Namikaze estate the same day of the trials and every girl had their own room, with Naruto having the major bedroom. There was a private onsen and a rather large library, so Naruto had sent several clones to read it over the past 2 days. He had read much of the history and was beginning to head into the politics. Aside from that, he left the jutsus alone so he could master the ones he had now, although he did learn one wind technique. They were all very happy to have more room and it helped their friendships to live together, Hana having been given permission by Tsum. Speaking of Tsum, she had made a surprise visit and had quickly glimpsed the new Naruto. Naruto, while enjoying the attention his new features gave him, had asked if there was a way to hide them and Amaterasu had ended up teaching him a simple jutsu to hide his extra features. Once Tsum had calmed down, however, she had insisted that Naruto inform the Hokage about his change. Naruto had agreed and Hikari had mentally suggested that it be part of his bloodline so as to not arouse suspicion, which Naruto quickly agreed to. They didn't need anyone outside of their personal group knowing about his demigod status or mission, yet. As to his change, when they returned from the trials, Naruto had informed them of his age and nearly had to run from a rather horny Hana and Anko. However, they had quickly been cowed by the more level-headed Amaterasu and the Alpha Hikari. Needless to say, this had caused a major shift in the household. Where, before, the girls had all enjoyed his presence and were definitely contemplating their futures with him. Now, Hikari and Anko were ready to jump him. Hana was seriously considering ignoring the dating phase and joining the I Want Naruto's Meat Stick group, and Amaterasu was having trouble trying to keep herself from doing something rash. Simply put, Naruto was now legal and he had the body of a blonde Adonis, meaning that Anko and Hikari were done waiting for him to grow up while Amaterasu and Hana were trying to build a better relationship first, though not too much. Naruto, on the other hand, hadn't made a move on any of the girls and they were a bit wary of his mentality concerning his new body. They didn't know if he was prepared to accept them sexually and they had all agreed, after the initial lust had subsided, that they would not pressure him into sex, although they didn't say they couldn't tempt him. Then again, Anko and Hikari had been tempting him for years so it may not work. Little did they know, Naruto was more than ready and he was just biding his time, for now. Hikari smiled as she finished packing the sushi away for the picnic and picked up the tea she had made for everyone, since they had woken up late and no one wanted to eat breakfast. She set it down with a smile and listened to what they were speaking of. Naruto laughed, so then, I made this seal that would weaken the wood of the vendor's cart enough so that, when he got his next watermelon shipment, it'd collapse and make him lose all of his stock. Well and I loosened his brakes so the cart would roll downhill before collapsing, he said with a smile on his face. The girls quickly joined in on the laughs. While Hikari and Anko had often seen his pranks, Even they didn't know all of them, and most of them were actually rather funny. And all this because she sold you rotten food? Man, I'd hate to see what happens to someone who really annoys you. Hana said, smirking. Naruto smirked. You don't wanna know, Hana-chan, he said. Anko shook her head. Don't even ask what happened the first time I decided to prank him, she said. Naruto smiled devilishly. Oh yeah, how did that turn out for ya, butterfly? He asked, getting confusing looks from the other girls, sans Hikari. Anko blushed furiously. You promised that you wouldn't mention it, she hissed at him. Naruto chuckled. What's the matter? If the way you all acted when we returned from the trials is any indication, they're going to find out about it being somewhere private, he said, surprising his girls as they didn't really expect him to make such an innuendo. Hana leaned in. So you gonna tell us or leave us hanging? She asked, nearly drooling at the prospect of having blackmail on her friend. Naruto opened his mouth and Anko promptly covered it. Fine, I tried to put dye in his shampoo bottle when he was 9. He came out with neon green hair for a week, she said, getting giggles from all the girls. Naruto glared at her and removed her hand. I was pissed, so I decided to get back at her. She came home after a particularly long mission and I got her drunk, he said. Anko glared back. Yeah, and after you got me drunk you somehow got me to an all-night tattoo parlor and was able to goad my drunk ass into getting a tattoo, she said angrily. Naruto smirked. That's what you get for trying to prank the prank master, he said. The Hana and Amaterasu turned to one another before smirking and turning back to the paling Anko. So, where is it? Hana asked. And I'm assuming it's a butterfly considering that Naruto-kun called you that. Amaterasu added as she leaned in closer with Hana. And now girls, I'm sure we can. Anko never got to finish. It's on the inside of her right thigh. It's a purple and gold butterfly, purple for her and gold for Naruto-kun. Hikari said, smirking. Anko stared at her with her jaw slack. She had totally forgotten that Hikari was inside of Naruto when he did that. She was brought from her thoughts as Hana and Amaterasu squeled and grabbed her, begging to be shown. She sighed and yelled, Fine, get off me. Hana and Amaterasu immediately backed off but stayed nearby with big puppy dog eyes, enhanced by their feral qualities. She slowly raised her skirt to show a beautiful purple and gold butterfly rather close to the edge of her panties, and her special place. Hana whistled, That's pretty. She looked into Anko's eyes and smirked. Naruto-kun must be impressed that he has scenery while he's eating out, she said. Anko promptly blushed bright red. Despite her teasing, Hana had found that Anko was very prone to embarrassment when Naruto was involved. Naruto, who was sitting there, was also red, but he smirked. Indeed, I am Hana-chan. Maybe you should get some scenery as well, he asked her, causing her blush to rival that of Anko's own. Hikari smirked. As much as I love seeing you establish your territory, you have a meeting with the Hokage and then lunch with me, so, get, she said as she pushed him towards the door. Naruto smirked. Alright already, he said as he headed towards the door, keep your panties on. Naruto paused and looked over his shoulder and right at Hikari. On second thought, take 'em off, he said, causing yet another tomato blush, and he walked out of the room laughing, barely dodging the vase that shattered against the wall. Hikari turned back to the girls who were all still blushing, Amaterasu less than the others. Well, I guess we were too good at teasing him, huh, Anko, she said, smirking. The girls all nodded and Hikari shook her head. Well, I have a lunch date to set up later, she said as she grabbed the basket with the sushi and disappeared in a flash of fire. The rest of the girls just shook their heads, trying to get rid of their blushes. Hokage's office, 10:30 a.m. Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Sarutobi were waiting for Naruto to show up. While they all knew that Tsunade would take the Hokage position, Naruto had yet to be informed. Speaking of Tsunade, the chakra exercise that she had given to Naruto was progressing very well. He could float a medium-sized boulder for a good 15 minutes while a large boulder forced his concentration and reserves, too much to hold it for longer than 3 minutes. Naruto kicked the door open and the 3 occupants took in the new Naruto. Since he had aged, he had decided to change his look again. He now had baggy black cargo pants, reinforced of course, with shin guards and black combat boots on. His shirt was, again, black, but it depicted a hurricane with lightning on the back, with the Uzumaki swirl over his heart on the front. He had a long black coat on that went to his ankles and had golden flames along the bottom. It also had the kanji for storm and defense in gold along the back. His hitayate was strapped to her right arm and his hair was reminiscent of Minato's, but he let the hair flow freely down his neck and upper back. Think Ichigo's hairstyle from when he fully masters Zanjutsu, but longer and with Minato's front bangs. Jiraiya let loose a whistle. Looking smart there, kid, he said with a smirk. Naruto smiled, thanks. So do we need to set up a silencing tag again, he asked. Sarutobi shook his head as Naruto closed the door. No need, Naruto-kun. Since Danzo's flight, I have had no problem with information leaks. Besides, the information here will soon become common knowledge, he said, smiling softly. Naruto looked to his two estranged godparents. So, I'm guessing one of you chose to accept the Hokage position, he half-asked. Tsunade nodded. I have agreed to become Godame Hokage. Dan and Noeka would want me to carry on their dream, she smiled softly before it turned into a smirk. Besides, if I let the pervert have it, he'd make all the kunoichi wear stuff like Anko, she said. Suddenly Jiraiya burst out crying. Why did I not accept when I had the chance, he asked, crying anime tears. The other occupants just sweat dropped and Naruto turned to her. That's good to hear, Oba-san. So, what's your first order of business, he asked, taking a seat with Tsunade taking the other and leaving Jiraiya to stand on the side. Tsunade's eye twitched but she sighed and let it go. I want to address the Medic Nin program and the academy. From what you told me when we trained, the academy needs a major overhaul. The medics, well, don't get me started, she said, sighing again. Naruto nodded. Might I suggest a class for Fuinjutsu for the academy? At the very least, ninja should be able to seal and unseal their gear and such. Even if they can't actually make the seal, he said. Tsunade nodded. That's a good idea. I will definitely take that into consideration, she said. This line of suggestions and a few arguments between students, teacher, and Jinhuriki continued until 12:20 a.m., when Naruto noticed the clock. Naruto paled. I gotta go, he yelled and shot out of his chair. Everyone gave him weird looks until he said, I'm supposed to meet Hikari-chan for lunch in 10 minutes. He quickly rushed out the door to the amused chuckles of the elders inside. The Sandaime pulled out some sake and handed them all a cup. To be young and virile again, he said with an amused chuckle. He raised his glass to the door. To family, he said, smiling, getting a smile and a raised glass from both of his students before they went back to work. Clearing near Konoha, 12:30 a.m. Naruto landed in the preset clearing and looked around for his Demoness. When he noticed that no one was there, he began to slowly expand his senses. For a good 5 minutes he continued to look around, until a flash of red caught his eye. He turned to the woods and noticed a fully grown red fox staring right at him. It quickly turned and ran off when he caught sight of it, and he jumped into action as he barreled through the trees after the elusive fox. Naruto didn't notice it at the time, but the fox had 9 tails trailing behind it. He chased the fox for a good 15 minutes, losing sight of it a few times because of the thick underbrush, and finally grew fed up with it. He leapt into the air, and when he landed, a magnificent golden wolf with bright blue eyes took off after the fox. The fox, rather surprised by this, dashed out into a clearing and looked back only to be blindsided by a golden blur. The two creatures tumbled across the clearing and ended up near a set blanket with some sushi and a small jar of sake on it. The fox was looking up at the wolf with slight fear while the wolf was growling down at his prey. Suddenly, the wolf stopped growling and its muzzle came down to nip and lick at the fox's neck, caused the fox to meow out in appreciation. The wolf stopped and seemed to smirk. As much as I would like to continue our little hunt, Kitsunheim, I am hungry. Naruto's voice floated into the fox's mind. The fox blushed under her fur and nodded. I am too. I didn't know you could change into a wolf. Hikari's voice also transmitted to Naruto. They both changed out of their animal forms and Naruto stood up, offering a hand to his Demoness. Hikari was dressed in a rather loose red kimono with blue fire dancing along the edges. She was barefoot, however, and the kimono showed a generous amount of cleavage. I wanted it to be a surprise, so surprise, he said with a smile as she took his hand and got up. Hikari smiled and blushed slightly as he held her hand and led her to the blanket. It certainly was a surprise, and impressive, she replied. Naruto blushed under the praise and they sat down on the blanket. Thank you. Susanoo thought it might be beneficial to have, so he added the feature, he said as Hikari put some sake into a glass and handed it to him. He smiled and shed his jacket to the side. Hikari smiled again. I'll have to thank him later then, she said. Naruto nodded and they both began to eat in a comfortable silence. The day was beautiful, not too hot nor too cold, A soft cool breeze filtered through the trees and untamed grass. Naruto finished eating almost half of the sushi and smiled at Hikari as she continued to slowly savor her food. He had only had one glass of sake, even though Hikari had filled it again. He quietly lay down and began to look at the clouds, but he still kept an eye on Hikari. Hikari, on the other hand, was actually enjoying her food, and the very slight buzz she had. It wasn't often that the two of them just went and had some quiet alone time, regardless of their symbiotic relationship. It was nice to see Naruto enjoy the food she made, and she had found his wolf form rather enticing. She subtly shifted and looked at Naruto. He seemed so at peace, and it wasn't often she saw him like this. She smiled softly and closed her eyes thinking, I'm glad he's so relaxed, I'll just leave him alone. As much as I want him, I need to wait until he's ready. Naruto smirked as he saw Hikari close her eyes. He silently created a cage bunshin and it grabbed the various glasses and such and quietly moved them off of the blanket. Hikari opened her eyes as she felt herself be gently tackled to the blanket. Naruto let out his celestial features and smirked at his future mate. You weren't planning on something else after this lunch, were you, Kitsunheim? He asked as he kept her pinned to the blanket and started to subtly move his body over hers. She blushed. Maybe. Why? She asked as she let her own demonic features appear as well. Naruto smirked and his face descended to her, capturing her lips in a passionate kiss. Hikari went ramrod straight, her tails flaring straight out around her back, before melting into the kiss. Naruto pulled back and smiled at the slightly dazed look in her eyes. You're going to have to come back to reality if you want to continue, he said. Hikari snapped out of her slight funk and stared at Naruto. See, continue, you want to. She never got to finish as a moan escaped her lips. Lemon warning. Under 18, please skip to the next bolded line. Naruto was slowly nipping and licking at an exposed part of Hikari's neck. He stopped and moved his mouth to her ear. Don't ask, just go with it, he whispered into her ear before engaging in a lip lock again, this time getting a very energetic Hikari to engage in a tongue war. The cage bunshin off to the side was giggling perversely but suddenly looked shocked and disappeared. The real Naruto smirked and thought, my cage bunshin don't get a free show. Hikari smirked as she heard the giggling stop and let out another moan as Naruto's wandering hands started to knead her breasts. She reached up and tugged on Naruto's shirt, causing him to stop and quickly divest himself of the offending article of clothing. Naruto smirked as he slipped his hands into her kimono and noticed she wasn't wearing a bra. He quickly sent his hands to the underside of her large DD cup breasts and found a small softer spot than the rest and began to let one of his fingers gently massage that spot, causing Hikari's moans to get louder. Hikari was moaning so loud she couldn't believe it. He had found 3 of her special erogenous zones in under a minute. The one on her neck, and the 2 on her breasts. How did you know about these spots? She asked as she undid the rest of her kimono to show her wet red and black lace panties. Naruto smirked as he took in her nearly naked form. She was just as perfect as he remembered and smiled seeing her nipples actually be in the shape of red spirals, similar to the Uzumaki swirl. He kept his fingers working her breasts as he answered, You don't think I'm just that good? He asked with mock hurt in his voice. She half glared at him, although that was hard to do as his mouth started to lick that neck spot again. She moaned aloud and her hips started to thrust a little as she could feel all of this attention bringing her to a release. No man is this you good their first time, she moaned out. She felt his tails brush against her panties and her hips nearly jumped forward. Naruto removed his right hand from her breast and his tail kept brushing lightly against her panties and his right hand made its way to her tails, which were flailing as a symbol of her pleasure. He smirked and said, Quite right, but you don't think Inari could keep me from killing him so easily, huh? Before his mouth latched onto her nipple and began to tease it mercilessly. Hikari moaned again and was debating on cursing the fox god, or kissing him. She decided to settle for ignoring him as Naruto's tail put more pressure on her panties and he let go of her nipple, causing her to whimper. I think you deserve something for that wonderful lunch, Hikari-koi, he said before his mouth latched onto her other nipple and his right hand pressed a spot above her tails causing her eyes to widen and her mouth to open into an O as her pussy convulsed and her orgasm spread throughout her body. She could feel her juices stain her panties but she didn't care as she felt one of the best orgasms of her life hit her. She was still acutely aware of his tail now teasing her right nipple as his mouth covered her left and his right hand still pressed firmly into her tail's erogenous zone. She slowly came down from her high only to notice that Naruto was hard and he still had his pants on. She frowned, this wasn't fair. She already had an orgasm and he was still clothed. She quickly divested herself of her now ruined panties and tossed them aside. Naruto was a bit surprised, but he didn't have time to contemplate it as he found his pants around his legs and a horny Hikari pushing him up and glaring at him with the patented, "Take them off before I rip them off," stare. Naruto chuckled and took off the remainder of his clothes, revealing his rock-hard 9.5-inch cock, which was at least as thick as 3 of her fingers. Hikari smirked. "I did good work," she thought as she laid back on the blanket with her legs open and made a "come here" motion with her finger. Naruto smiled softly and knelt between her legs, although he was slightly nervous. Hikari just smiled. "It's fine, Naruto-kun," she said, calming his nerves somewhat. He looked at her slick opening and was surprised. He had studied anatomy and knew that, although a woman may be tight, her pussy should have an opening. Instead it seemed like there was a small indentation where her opening should be. He looked at Hikari with a questioning glance and she blushed. Female demons are mated to the first man who enters them. It's one of the reasons rape is so detested even by demons. "Just do like you normally would and it'll be fine," she said, blushing furiously. She may like to taunt him, but that didn't mean she wasn't still a virgin. Naruto smiled and nodded. "Okay, Hikari-chan." He pressed himself slowly into that small indentation and was surprised when Hikari moaned loudly and his body was practically pulled into Hikari's as his cock entered her in one smooth motion. He didn't move as he half fell on top of his first lover and was looking at her slightly worried. He hadn't felt any hymen, so to speak, and she hadn't seemed to be in any pain like what the anatomy book said. Hikari opened her eyes and smirked at Naruto, shifting slightly, causing them both to moan. "Are you going to sit there all day?" she asked, getting a smirk from Naruto and a grinding of their pelvic bones together. He leaned forward and licked her neck again. "Only if you want me to," he said lustfully into her ear as her pumped into her willing pussy. Hikari smiled and wrapped her arms around his neck, and her tails around his thighs, as he started to press himself into her pussy. What few knew was a demon's pussy shaped to their mate's cock, so Naruto was in vaginal heaven and Hikari could feel him hit both her G-spot and her cervix with every thrust. Naruto noticed her pleasure and started to pick up the pace, nearly pounding into her as she wrapped her legs around his waist and their hips met with the lewd sounds of flesh on flesh. Naruto's tail wrapped around one of Hikari's as he continued to pound into her and moaned aloud, "You're beautiful, Hikari-chan. I could fuck you all day," he said as he felt himself getting closer and closer to the edge. Her pussy felt like a warm, wet hug to his cock and he loved every minute of it as he kept pushing himself deep into her gorgeous body. Hikari shook her head trying to get her bearings enough to respond and moaned aloud before responding, "Do it. I'd love to love you all day long," she half screamed as she felt the knot in her stomach getting tighter and tighter. "Hi Hikari-chan, I'm going to come," he said as he nearly did so with another thrust into her tight and willing hole. "Go ahead. Come inside me," she yelled as she pulled Naruto flush to her body when his cock brushed her cervix and caused her orgasm. Naruto grunted in response and happily complied as she pulled him against her own body and felt his cock go into overdrive and start filling his demoness with his baby batter. Hikari couldn't believe how hard she had come. She could feel her body tense and her pussy clamp on Naruto like a vice. She moaned aloud as she felt his cock spew straight into her womb and could feel each glob of cum as it pressed its way through his rigid meat stick while forcing her pussy to expand to make way for the warm liquid her body yearned for. Her eyes widened slightly before becoming glazed as she felt her womb literally be filled and his cum overflow and coat her pussy walls white. She sighed in contentment as her orgasm tapered off and she felt his cock going soft inside of her. Naruto, on the other hand, was seeing spots. He felt her pussy clamp down and had moaned at the sensation. Her pussy fit him like a glove and he loved it. He could feel her pussy milking him, and he happily supplied his cum to her willing hole. He finally felt his orgasm taper off and he looked right into Hikari's dazed eyes. His eyes suddenly glowed a soft blue and he felt a small pulse from his avatar mark. He smirked as he felt his canine lengthen slightly, so he bit her on the neck, channeling his chakra into her. He winced slightly when she returned the gesture but snuggled into her neck and whispered, "Mine," into her ear, his chakra still enhancing his voice. Hikari's eyes widened as he marked her and smiled before launching her own teeth into his neck and marking him as her own. She sighed as she let go and watched the mark form into a beautiful red kyuubi. She suddenly felt Naruto snuggle against her own mark and whisper, "Mine," softly into her ear, even as his voice trembled with power. She smiled and cuddled closer to him. "Lemon End. You are safe now." Naruto sighed happily as he cuddled with Hikari and stroked her hair, causing the Fox Queen to purr. He smiled as he felt her shift slightly to a more comfortable position and her tails covering most of their bodies. That was wonderful, Hikari-koi, he said softly. Hikari murmured back, still snuggled into his chest. We definitely need to do that again, and maybe add Anko-chan, she said with a perverse smirk on her face. Naruto blushed but chuckled. Maybe, if she wants to, he said smirking. He checked the sun and noticed it was nearly 2 in the afternoon. We have another hour or two before the other girls get suspicious, he said. Hikari smirked and shifted her head so she could look in his eyes. Are you saying what I think you're saying? She asked. Naruto shook his head. Unfortunately, no, she pouted, but Naruto said, you got me first, so we need to wash or they will all know it, and I'd prefer for you to have the element of surprise on that, he said. Hikari's eyes suddenly got a prankster-like gleam. Alright then, there's a small pond nearby. We could clean up there, she said. Naruto smirked. That sounds like fun, he said, his own eyes gleaming. Hikari slowly stood up and stretched. Well, what are we waiting? She turned back to Naruto only to be left in the dust as a golden blur rushed past her and towards the pond. She stamped her foot in frustration and yelled, That's not fair, Naruto-kun, before leaping and changing into her fox form and chasing after him. That night, lab. After a harmless and sexless bath, Naruto and Hikari had returned to the lab. Amaterasu and Hana had been out, as Amaterasu had taken to helping Hana with her veterinarian duties, and they would return late tonight. However, Anko had noticed Hikari's glow and giggled. How was he, Hikari-chan? She asked, smirking, causing the Demoness and her mate to blush. Hikari suddenly giggled back, bigger and better than expected. Inari's little secret was quite pleasurable and worth it, she said, smirking. Anko looked back and forth between them before Naruto sighed. Inari is the god of foxes, so he told me all of Hikari-chan's special areas. He smirked, and I put them to very good use, he said. Anko giggled perversely and Naruto suddenly found her draped over his back with her mouth breathing heavily into his ear. I hope we get to explore a little more than you did with Hikari-chan, she said seductively. Naruto smirked and turned his head to let her see it. Maybe you should let Hikari-chan join in then, he said. Anko's eyes went wide and she blushed but smirked. Sounds like fun, Naruto-kun, she whispered into his ear. Hikari blushed off to the side. Naruto suddenly turned and captured Anko's lips in a kiss, and she pulled a Hikari by stiffening and then melting into it. When they broke for air, Naruto smirked. I'll make sure to satisfy you later, Hebi-hime. For now, I'm tired and I want my pillows, he said somewhat childishly. Both girls broke out into giggles as they grabbed him and they all appeared on the bed, Naruto's head snuggled firmly into their generous busts. Naruto had one thought as he drifted off to sleep, it's good to be me. Next day, Team 10 meeting area, 10 a.m. Naruto shunshined in and smiled at his team. Ever since his little show for the clan heads, they had really come together. While Yamato had taught them all a defensive jutsu, he had decided to teach them each an offensive one as well, before he would request a C-rank mission. For Ino, since she had lower reserves, he taught her the Sutten, Tepidama no Jutsu, water release, water buller technique, which allowed her to shoot up to 3 water balls, at her current level, at her enemy with high force. For Shino, he had taught him Doton, Doryaso no Jutsu, earth release, rising stone spears technique, which, as the name implies, causes the earth to form spears to attempt to impale a target. For Naruto, he taught him the Sutten, Suryuadon no Jutsu, water release, water dragon technique, which formed from a nearby water source into a dragon. Now, Yamato only taught Naruto such a strong technique because he knew, even though Naruto's control was pretty good, that any low-level technique would either blow up or become insanely overpowered by Naruto's chakra. So, he opted for power instead of control. This technique could be manipulated, but Naruto would never have the control to more than turn it. As it was, Naruto could only blast it straight forward. Naruto jogged over to his team and said, "Ohio Mina." Ino smiled. "Ohio Naruto-kun," she replied. Shino and Yamato both inclined their heads in greeting and Yamato stepped forward. "Okay, all of you have done tremendously well in your jutsus. I have started Shino and Ino on their elemental manipulation, and I asked Kakashi-san and Asuma-san to detail the first step of lightning and wind manipulation for you, Naruto, here on these scrolls," he said before handing the scrolls to said genin. Naruto smiled and bowed. "Thank you, sensei. I appreciate this," he said. Yamato waved him off. "It's all fine, Naruto-kun. Consider it a thank you for giving me a chance to get to know you instead of just immediately writing me off as the Sandame's spy, he said with a soft smile. Naruto nodded. I don't like to prejudge, after all, that's what the villagers do, he said. Yamato nodded before clapping his hands together. Well, I believe it is time for us to get a C-rank mission, he said cheerfully, gaining a smile from Ino and Naruto, while Shino just buzzed slightly. Let's go then, Yamato said, noticing their excitement. The team quickly made its way to the Hokage Tower and Sarutobi smiled when they walked in. Team 10. I was expecting you. I have a very nice C rank for exterminating some bandits between here and the Hot Springs country, he said smiling. Yamato looked at his genin and saw only determination to prove their worth to their Jounin sensei. We accept Hokage-sama, he said with a proud smile. Good to hear, the aged Hokage said before handing the scroll to the Jounin. Yamato looked at the scroll and nodded before turning to his students. I will give you the night to prepare. It will take us 3 days to reach the bandit camp, so pack accordingly. Dismissed, he said, and watched with pride as they all disappeared to prepare. Sarutobi smiled. You have trained them well. I just hope they are ready, he commented. Yamato smiled softly. They work together now and I have no doubt they are more than ready. Let's just hope that bandits are the only thing we encounter on this mission, he said before disappearing himself. Kyumo Council Room, 5 p.m. same day. Yujito had just returned from her most recent mission, a full 2 days ahead of schedule. Another of her specialized missions that the council was trying to force on her. She completed the mission just like she had all the others, meaning she beat the guy so bad that he just gave her what she wanted without having to resort to debasing herself for the information. Yujito frowned as she thought of the council's recent actions. They had become very earnest in their attempts to turn her into a slut. The Raikage himself had warned her to not sleep alone, if she could help it, and she had taken the advice to heart. She often stayed at Killer Bee's or Samui's apartment. The past few months had been nerve-wracking. The council hadn't stopped putting in petitions and missions to get the feline female into their grasp, and she, or the Raikage, had thwarted them at every turn. Still, as she approached the council room after her latest mission, she couldn't help but feel that something was horribly wrong. Inside the room, the counselors most adamant about making the woman nothing more than their personal cum bucket were in attendance, along with a very high-ranking squad of Umbu who happened to hate the Nibi for personal reasons. They were currently discussing their latest failed petition to have Yujito placed under a loyalty seal almost identical to that of the caged bird seal, except that this one would make her subservient and almost constantly horny as a bonus. How can that oversized bull of a man deny our requests for a loyal slave? One fat lazy businessman by the name of Manabir Hinaki said loudly as he took another swig of sake. Another man, this time slimmer but with a very deceptive appearance, said, he does not believe that the Nibi can influence Nii-san. However, we all know the legends of the cat being a wonderful seductress, and I, for one, would love to find out just how limber the kitty cat is in bed, his tone becoming lecherous at the end. This man was Rikoto Iberia, who held a rather lofty position in the banking industry and delighted in going to the whorehouses at least once a week, usually more. Yet another man with glasses and a law book in hand added, I too would enjoy knowing her limitations. She is said to deny any man her pleasures, and we all know that women are nothing more than tools for our recreation, he said with a smirk. This was Fumio Akihira, who owned most of the food stores in town. Bah, who cares about other women? I just want that cat bitch under my body moaning my name. When do we just ignore that idiotic Raikage and give her the seal anyway? The previous Raikage would have given her to us the first time we asked. Manabu said. Fumio shook his head. Soon, but you must be patient. We can only put the plan into action when she returns from her next mission, he said before turning to the leader of the Umbu, a snake-masked man. Is everything set? He asked. The Umbu nodded. Indeed, me and my team have set traps in her apartment to drug her. Once we have her, we will apply the seal and take her to Manabu-sama's estate. Once he is done with her, we shall ensure that her programming is complete before turning her over to you, he said. Although you couldn't see it, the 3 other Umbu were all smirking. They would love to get a piece of the feline bitch, especially since she wouldn't be able to fight against the seal. Rikoto smiled. That is our agreement, Sank-san. You will also be free to enjoy her services anytime she is available in the future, he said, gaining a nod from the Umbu. Then it is settled. The entirety of the council is behind this movement, so do not fail us, he said. The team stiffened but nodded as one. In addition, if you are caught, we know nothing of this, he said dismissively. letting the team know they shouldn't fail as the Raikage protected Yugito religiously. Yugito, who was outside the council chambers, nearly broke down crying but settled for running away and getting atop her apartment complex before collapsing and crying her eyes out. Kitten, I know you probably don't want to hear this, but your best bet is to leave until those council members are gone, the Nibi said in her head. Contrary to most Jinhiriki, the Nibi and Hakusabi were sealed with their consent, and so their Jinhiriki were actually friends with said Baijuya. Needless to say, the Nibi was Yugito's closest and most trustworthy friend. Nibi-chan, they will just hunt me down, you know that, she replied mentally. Nibi sighed in Yugito's mindscape, perhaps kitten, but you will have a better chance out there than in here. People may trust B-san, but they are still wary of you because of those stupid necromancer rumors going around. 1. Yugito calmed down slightly and thought it over. On one hand, she had very few friends, mostly Killer B, his students, and the Raikage himself, as everyone else pretty much barely tolerated her. On the other hand, her friends would be very sad if she left. What of my friends Nibi-chan? She asked. Nibi purred softly, I'm sure they would understand kitten. If it is to protect your purity, they would understand. You know this, she replied. Yugito smiled softly as she remembered many times where her friends protected her from the council. She shook her head free of those thoughts and had two more. They may be sad, but they wouldn't have to fight the council so much anymore. Nibi-chan, where do I go if I leave? She asked the Baijuya. Nibi smirked in her mind. You remember I recently told you about a human who received an avatar mark, correct? She asked, getting a mental nod from her container. She continued, as you know, the Shinigami is a good friend of mine, so I called him and he told me who received the mark, she said. Nibi was silent for a minute and Yugito grew frustrated. Quit keeping me in suspense, you dem cat. Who is it? She half yelled, getting a chuckle from her friend. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of Konoha's Kiro Isenko, Minato Namikaze, and his wife the aka Shinku, Kushina Uzumaki, container and maid to Hikari, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, avatar of Susanoo, she said, smirking at the sudden jaw drop of her container. Yugito came back to her senses when she heard Nibi's chuckle in her head. Well, that's one way to get my attention. After I gather my things, where to? She asked her tenant. Nibi smirked. Hook, line, and sinker, kitten. Just gather your things, I can direct you to Hikari's signature when we leave. Nibi said. Yugito smiled softly and nodded in agreement before gathering her things. It was time to feel safe for once. Naruto's lab, 6:45 p.m. Naruto had decided to let Amaterasu have the house, along with the girls, to get ready for their date. Hikari had opted to help Amaterasu get ready for the date. Naruto dressed in a formal dark blue dress kimono with a small orange Uzumaki swirl over his left breast and a whirlwind with lightning striking around it on his back, the new Namikaze clan symbol. He kept his celestial features hidden though. He smirked as he noticed the time and thought, time to pick up my Megami Hime. He chuckled as he disappeared. Naruto sighed and looked at the clock one more time. He still had 5 minutes before he was to show up for his date with Amaterasu. He had learned from Anko and Hikari that a first date was never early, nor late. He shook his head and smiled. His girls were really getting along. Naruto was a little anxious when Hana had joined his group. Even though Hikari had accepted her, he was afraid she wouldn't connect with his other two fiancés. And, while it was true that Hana didn't connect much to Hikari or Anko, she had immediately taken to hanging with Amaterasu. Not totally surprising considering Amaterasu's patronage over wolves. Again, he was surprised when Amaterasu had confronted him in the forest that day, but was happy that she hadn't shot down the date idea. While Hikari may have suggested it, Naruto had felt a certain attraction to the silver-haired goddess before then. Naruto sighed as he thought about his date. She was a goddess, not that it mattered much to him, but she was rather strict. Hikari had often commented that Amaterasu, while having somewhat of a playful side, was far too uptight. Naruto had thought she was over-exaggerating but had readily agreed after spending a week with her. When she had worked with his clones, she hadn't tolerated them goofing off when they got bored or frustrated and often smacked the back of their heads, lightly so as to not dispel them, to make them stay on task. Hikari had suggested that Amaterasu needed to get laid or just pull a prank, but said goddess had always denied it. Then again, Naruto was surprised when Susanoo had literally told him to fuck her brains out, but he didn't argue as one. He got to screw a hot goddess too. She may actually loosen up if said action works. And 3. Hikari and Anko, who was persuaded by the Demonis, had dropped subtle hints that they would like to have Amaterasu join them in their future family. Needless to say, their hints were more like glaring signs. Now, Naruto wasn't a womanizer, but Amaterasu was good friends with both his fiancées and he was sure they wouldn't object. Besides, he knew he would need more women for his harem, so why not look early? Unfortunately, he hadn't noticed any other women of note, at least none that paid any attention to him, and had settled for just Hikari and Anko until these two new women were introduced. He was happy to meet Anko's friends and had felt an attraction to the feral Hana. He had acted on his attraction and hoped she wouldn't be negative to him. He had been pleasantly surprised with her and actually rather happy to hear about the arranged marriage. Pausing for a second, he nodded his head. If Amaterasu got a date, then he would have to ask Hana out as well. He nodded again in agreement to his thoughts before looking at the time and starting to sweat nervously. If he didn't hurry, he'd be late, and on the receiving end of four righteous women's fury. Still, he had one last thought before he left: time to pick up my Megami Hime. Time warp, 20 minutes ago, Namikaze Estates. Amaterasu was nervously opening and closing her hands as Hikari did her hair. Hana sighed in annoyance. Calm down, Ami-chan. You're going to break your hands at this rate, she said loudly as she painted the goddess's toes a dark blue tone. Amaterasu closed her eyes and took a deep breath before relaxing slightly. I'm sorry. I just haven't dated anyone in, well, a long time. I'm nervous, she replied. Anko chuckled from the side as she snacked on a stick of dango. Look, just because you like him doesn't mean you have to put out on the first night, she said, smirking, causing the goddess to blush and send a glare in her direction. I'm not going to sleep with Naruto-kun, she said heatedly. Hikari chuckled as she finished straining the goddess's hair and let it fall down her back like a waterfall, knowing Naruto loved seeing her own hair frame her face. You better not. It wouldn't be fair to poor Anko-chan, she said teasingly. Amaterasu, knowing she would be teased mercilessly, just huffed and crossed her arms. Hana sighed. Look, Naruto-kun isn't going to push you to do anything you don't want to. Hell, you should know this better than me. Just be yourself and have some fun. Naruto-kun won't let himself hurt you, she said, smiling. She may not have dated him yet, but she knew Naruto's personality wouldn't let him be anything less than a perfect gentleman. Amaterasu sighed and relaxed. You're right. I'm sorry. I just don't want to disappoint him. I like him, not as much as you all do, but still a lot, she said softly. Hikari's eyes softened. Ami-chan, just be yourself. Do things that you enjoy. Knowing Naruto-kun, all he wants is to see you happy. After all, that's how he acts with us, she said, smiling. Amaterasu nodded silently and looked at the time before panicking and running into her closet. Naruto would be there in 5 minutes. Hana turned to the others. So we still on for their second date? She asked, smirking. Hikari and Anko both smirked devilishly and said, hell yeah, before the girls started giggling. Amaterasu wouldn't know what hit her. Namikaze Estates, 7 p.m. Naruto arrived just in time and knocked on the door politely. He smiled as he saw Hana open the door. Hello, Hana-chan, is Ami-chan ready yet? He asked. Hana looked back and shook her head. Just another minute or so, Naruto-kun, she replied, smiling softly. Naruto nodded and rocked back on his heels. I'll wait in the gardens for her then. No reason to go inside on such a beautiful night, he said. Hana nodded, yelled inside as to where they would be, and stepped outside, closing the door behind her. They both started to walk down the path towards the gardens. The garden was well maintained, since the compound had been sealed in a time loop by Minato, and they both marveled at the variety of flowers here. Naruto stopped and smiled lovingly. You know, he started softly, I asked Ami-chan on a date and yet, I haven't been fair to you by extending the same curtsy, he said. Hana blinked owlishly before blushing slightly. Are you asking me out, Naruto-kun? She asked. Naruto nodded. I am. When I get back from my mission, would you honor me with your company for dinner? He asked slyly. Never let it be said that Hikari and Anko let Naruto be crude. Hana nodded in agreement. I would love to honor you with my presence, she replied, smirking slyly. Naruto raised an eyebrow and chuckled. Glad to hear you can keep up, he said. Hana giggled and noticed Amaterasu coming towards the garden, so she walked in front of him swaying her hips. The question you should be asking is, can I keep up with her? She said, smirking as she walked away. Naruto's jaw went slack. That was something he expected from Anko or Hikari, not Hana. As Hana walked past Amaterasu, she smiled warmly. Knock am dead, girl, she whispered as she walked back into the house. Amaterasu blushed lightly and walked right up to Naruto, whose eyes were in overdrive as he took in her appearance. Her sliver hair cascaded down her back to her ass, with it framing her face perfectly. She had a natural color of lipstick on and her finger and toenails were colored a dark blue to match the midnight blue kimono she had on. The kimono seemed to depict the night sky as it held several silver stars on it and was held together by a white sash. She was wearing blue shinobi stilettos. Naruto whistled softly, "Megumiheim, just when I thought you couldn't get any more beautiful, you have to go and prove me wrong," he said softly. This prompted a full Hinata-sized blush from the goddess, and she started to check him out. She knew what was under his kimono and decided to focus on his attire. His kimono was a dark blue with an Uzumaki swirl over his heart. On his back was a whirlwind surrounded in lightning. His hair was combed and the normal mane he had flowing down his neck was now in a small ponytail, although the front bangs still framed his face. He also wore some dark blue shinobi sandals. She smiled warmly and walked up to him, taking the girl's advice, and grabbed the small tie that held his ponytail together and pulled it out, letting his hair cascade down her upper back. "I prefer your hair this way," she said softly. Naruto blushed lightly and nodded. The two stood in a slightly awkward silence until Naruto cleared his throat and held his arm out for Amaterasu to take. "Shall we go to dinner, Ami-chan?" he asked. Normally, she didn't like being called that, but coming from Naruto it was a nickname she had come to enjoy. She took his arm and held onto it like a girlfriend would. "Yes, Naruto-kun," she said smiling as the two walked off into the night. Animal Kingdom, 7:15 p.m. Naruto and Amaterasu took their time walking through the city as they headed to the new restaurant. Naruto and his date walked into a rather classy-looking place and Amaterasu was impressed with the decorum. It actually had several sections to sit in. Each one had a different animal motif to it. There was a section for foxes, toads, hydras, lions, tigers, dragons, and wolves. Naruto smirked seeing Amaterasu's reaction. "Pretty cool, huh?" he asked. She nodded. "Very nice, Naruto-kun." "But, why don't you seem surprised?" she asked. Naruto smirked, but before he could answer the manager, who was manning the Matrad station in honor of the first night, smiled brightly and said, "Master Uzumaki. What a pleasant surprise. What can I do for you?" he asked ignoring the surprised, or disgusted, looks from the various patrons. Naruto smiled. "Shinzi. Good to see business is so good. If it isn't too much trouble, could we have a seat in the wolf section? Preferably somewhere out of the way so as to not disturb your other guests," he replied. The now identified Shinzi nodded and snapped his fingers, summoning two waiters. "You will wait on Mr. Uzumaki. Take him and his beautiful date to the lone wolf seats and ensure he is given proper service," he said to the employees. Both employees bowed and happily complied, after all they knew who signed the paychecks. "Please come this way," the female one said as the male rushed off to secure the table. Naruto nodded and motioned to Amaterasu who stepped forward and followed their waiter. Shinzi smiled. "Enjoy your dinner, sir," he yelled to him before taking up his station once again. They were soon shown their table and sat down. They were secluded from the main eating area and it was obviously designed for a couple's use. It had romantic lighting, a love seat for the two people to sit on, with the table set high enough so they could still sit back and eat comfortably. In the center of the table, there was a golden wolf with an orb in its mouth that glowed slightly, setting the mood. After they ordered their drinks, Amaterasu turned to Naruto and turned serious. "Explain," she said. Naruto sighed. "I invested in this place. I even requested the fox, hydra, and wolf motifs because of Hikari-chan, Anko-chan, and you. Before you ask, hydras for Anko-chan because she honestly likes them better than snakes and they would be better received in Konoha. Although, you would be surprised at the number of people who don't hate foxes. Honestly, I wasn't expecting to bring you here on a date, but it seems to have given me some sort of luck in getting you here," he said chuckling. Amaterasu's cheeks turned a light pink but she just smiled warmly. She had noticed that all of the wolves were a silver color, like her hair, and realized that he had used her as the basis for an entire section of the restaurant. "I'm honored you would do something like this for me," she said. Naruto smiled. "No problem, you gave me a lot of help. It's the least I could do." "So, do you like it?" he asked. She nodded. "Very much so. You have my animal form almost perfect, considering you've never seen it." "That's rather impressive," she commented. Naruto chuckled. "Thanks, actually I used ancient drawings and your hair color to create them, just like I used Hikari's form to inspire the fox section and Anko's purple hair and honey eyes for the hydras, he replied. Amaterasu smiled and they spent the rest of the night chatting either about the motifs or Naruto's pranks and Amaterasu's various avatars. After they had finished dinner and began to head home, Amaterasu smiled warmly at Naruto. Naruto-kun, I have 2 things I want to talk to you about. Would you accompany me? She asked. Naruto nodded. Sure, Ami-chan. Where to? He asked. Amaterasu just smirked and took off. Try to keep up, she said as she blurred across the rooftops. Naruto growled softly. You're not getting away that easily, he roared as he chased after her. Neither noticed the pale eyes that watched them in envy as they left. Konoha's Forest, 9 p.m. Amaterasu jumped into a clearing and changed into beautiful silver wolf with bright blue lines running along her body. She glanced back just in time to see Naruto land in the clearing and chase after her. She let her mental laughter ring clear and loud in his mind as she dashed away again. Naruto just smirked and jumped before landing in his golden wolf form and pouring on the speed. Not 10 minutes later, Naruto had caught up to Amaterasu and tackled her just like he did Hikari, capturing her under his paws. He growled lightly, causing surprise to come to her canine face. That was low, running off like that. I thought you were supposed to be the level-headed one, he said jokingly. Amaterasu mentally chuckled back. Maybe, but that doesn't mean I don't like a good chase now and again, she said. She noticed their position and blushed beneath her fur. Would you mind getting off me? She asked softly. Naruto chuckled and stepped back, changing back into his human form. Amaterasu flipped over onto her feet and changed back as well. Naruto crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow. So what did you want to talk about? He asked. Amaterasu smiled warmly and ran through a few hand seals before a large scroll appeared next to her. This is the Okama summoning contract. I would like you to be the first summoner and Sennin for it, seeing as I never let anyone else use it, she said. Naruto's jaw dropped. Why you want me to be the Okama Sennin? He asked. Amaterasu nodded. Consider it a present for passing the trials and an apology for not warning you, she said softly. Naruto regained his senses and smiled. I would be honored to use the Okama contract, Ami-chan, he replied. Amaterasu immediately brightened and smiled warmly at him. Then sign it and summon Fenrir. He's the boss summon. He may not be as strong as Hikari-chan, but he could take on the Goba with a bit of help, she said. Naruto nodded and signed the contract before running through the same hand seals she used and slammed his hand to the ground yelling, Kuki-yos no jutsu, causing a massive plume of smoke to appear beneath him. The smoke cleared to see a massive black wolf the size of Gamabunta with rugged-looking fur standing there. Eh? Who summoned me? He roared. Naruto raised his hand on the wolf's snout. I did, he said, letting his canine features show. Fenrir raised an eyebrow. You did? He sniffed and his eyes widened. Boy, explain why you have Lady Amaterasu scent on you before I decide you are a tasty snack, he growled at the human/god hybrid. Amaterasu giggled on the ground. Fenrir always was protective of her. It's okay, Fenrir-kun. He is the one who passed the immortality trials, so I have decided he is a worthy summoner, and maybe something more, she said with a slight blush at the end. Fenrir blinked owlishly. As you wish, Lady Amaterasu, he said, focusing his gaze on Naruto once more. Boy, take good care of Lady Amaterasu. She is precious to us wolves and we will be happy to aid you so long as you have her blessing, he said, gaining a nod from said blonde-haired demigod. Suddenly Fenrir's tone turned dark. However, if you hurt her, I will rip out your heart and enjoy feeding your body to my pups. Good night, boy, Lady Amaterasu, he said, bowing to his goddess and letting Naruto off his snout before disappearing. Naruto blinked owlishly and Amaterasu giggled again. Naruto shook his head and chuckled before turning to the goddess. So, what was the other thing you wanted to talk mphm, he started to say. Amaterasu had closed the distance between the two and started to make out with our blonde-haired hero. Naruto was taken off guard but soon returned the kiss. As the kiss ended, they both backed away panting for air. Amaterasu blushed. That was for showing me a great time, Naruto-kun. She looked away but continued and said, and I would like to have another with you when you return from your mission. That is if you want to. Naruto stared stupidly at her for a moment before smiling happily. I'd be honored to go out with you again, Ami-chan, he said, getting a skull from the happy goddess and yet another passionate kiss. When they broke again, Naruto chuckled. As much as I love being kissed, I think we need to head home. I need to wake early tomorrow, he said, getting a nod from the blushing silver-haired woman. Namikaze Estates, 10 p.m. Naruto smiled as they walked into the house. He lived on the third floor, the master bedroom being on that floor, and the girls lived on the second. They ascended the stairs and stopped at the entrance to the hallway of the second floor. He turned to Amaterasu and pulled her close. I enjoyed tonight, Megami Hime. I can't wait for our next date, he said, smiling warmly. Amaterasu was blushing again, so she just nodded and kissed him softly before stepping away and towards her room. Naruto smiled and headed upstairs with a goofy smile on his face. Amaterasu entered her room and walked quietly over to her bed. She took off her shoes and plopped down on the bed face first. She stayed still for a moment before she squealed loudly and rolled back over. She sighed and was about to sit up when she heard a very familiar voice say, "So he was that good, huh?" Hana said, smirking as she sat in a chair across the room. Amaterasu immediately sat up and looked at her, only to notice that Anko was sitting in another chair and Hikari was now draped over her shoulders. "Tell us all about your date with Naruto-kun," she said, saying all and Naruto-kun in a sexy voice, causing Amaterasu to blush. It was going to be a long night for the Naruto lovers. Next morning, 8 a.m., West Gates. Naruto shunshined to the gates only to see his team already waiting for him. "Ohio Mina," he said loudly as he stepped forward towards the gates. The team turned to him and Shino nodded. "Ohio Naruto. It is good to see you," he said. Naruto nodded back. "Good to see you as well. Is everyone ready?" he asked. Everyone nodded and Yamato smiled. "Good, then we will be in a diamond formation. Naruto at the front, Ino to the right, Shino to the left, myself at the back. Naruto, create a few Kage Bunshin and have them patrol in front of us in an arc for any traps or ambushes." Once again, his team nodded. "Good. Team 10, move out," he said as they all blurred into the treetops. Yamato smiled as he saw that Ino kept up with the rest of the group. She had been the weakest of the team, but Yamato had made sure to get her to train physically, and, while she wasn't overly fast, she was definitely able to keep up at a mid-chinin speed. He turned his attention to the entirety of his team and spoke up. "Our destination is a small village called Yoka. The village elder, a man named Wiley, has asked for our assistance in ridding the area of bandits. There have also been rumors of living skeletons, but I highly doubt such things. It is simply best to be informed. I expect us to be there on the eve of the third day." "Understood?" he asked. Three voices chorused out "Also," as they poured out more chakra to enhance their speed. Maybe it wouldn't take them that long to get there. Time skip, 2 days, village of Yoka. It was dusk and many people were heading home for the day when 4 people wandered into town. The Konoha group had arrived a full day ahead of schedule, much to Yamato's surprise and pride. Yamato smiled at his team. "We have made great time. Let's inform Wiley-san of our arrival and secure lodgings for the night. Tomorrow we will start our search for bandits," he said, getting weary nods from both Shino and Ino. Naruto raised his hands into a familiar hand sign and said, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, creating 10 clones. 1 of you, go find an inn. 4 of you, take positions around the village for the night and cover each of the cardinal directions. The last 5, gather info from the civilians and patrol the village after they are in bed. However, 1 of you dispel so I can gain the info before sleep," he said, getting stiff nods from his clones. They all sped off in different directions. Yamato smiled at Naruto's forethought. "Good, Naruto. However, I don't believe you will get much information before the civilians turn in for the night," he said as he took the lead towards where he was informed the elder's house was. Naruto nodded. "I know, sensei, but that doesn't mean we can't get a head start with even a small amount of information," he replied. Yamato nodded back. "Very well," he acquiesced as they walked up to the elder's house and he knocked on the door. A few seconds later a young woman answered the door and stared surprised at the shinobi. "Hello, we are the shinobi that Wiley-san hired to clear out the bandits. Would you please inform him that we are here?" he asked. The woman nodded dumbly and rushed back inside. Not even a minute later, an old man with gray hair and a cane stood in the doorway. "Shinobi-san. I must say you have arrived earlier than expected," he said. Yamato smiled. "Yes, we are. I apologize if that puts you in an awkward position. We would like to request permission to use your village as a base of operations whilst we track down and destroy the bandits," he replied. Wiley nodded. "That is fine. The bandits seem to prey on innocent younger travelers. Thankfully there have been no reports of them taking women. They seem to be based to the east near the Dekao River. However, I must warn you. There have been rumors of a man in a black cloak going around raising skeletons and the like. While I am no shinobi, I thought it best to inform you in case you run across him, he said. Yamato nodded again. We already heard them. I would not put much stock in such rumors. Thank you for your information, it may prove invaluable, he replied. Wily nodded and bowed to the shinobi before bidding them a good night and closing the door. Yamato turned back to his team just in time to see Naruto's face scrunch up in concentration. Naruto, you have something? He asked. Naruto shook his head. Most of the villagers I got to said the same as Wily-san. The inn is on the other side of town and we have 3 rooms, one for you Yamato-sensei, one for me and Shino, and one for Ino-chan. All paid for, of course, he said. Ino smiled and gave him a quick peck on the cheek. Thanks for being considerate, Naruto-kun, she said as they walked along the street. Naruto nodded. No problem, Ino-chan. You are my teammate after all, he said, smiling. They soon arrived at the inn and each took to their respective rooms, all confident in Naruto's clones to stand guard, and quickly fell asleep so as to begin their hunt tomorrow. Time skip, 2 days, forest east of Yoka. A purple and gold blur flashed through the treetops. As it landed, one could make out the form of Yujito Nii. Damn it, she roared in her mind as she took off running again. How could they have caught on so fast, she asked herself. It was 4 days since her escape from Kumo. She had reached the border in 2 and they were already on high alert for her passing through. She had barely been able to hide from them and she had a very bad feeling that she would be found soon. Kitten, calm yourself. You've been running for 2 days straight. Hikari-chan's signature is close. Please, find a town and take a rest. You need it, the cat Biju implored. Yujito jumped once again and silently went over her options. She was dead tired, her chakra was almost out, she couldn't waste a soldier pill right now, and she was filthy. She hadn't seen any signs of pursuit, but she had learned long ago to trust her instincts. Right now, they were screaming at her that she was in danger. She sighed and dropped to the forest floor. Fine, Nibi-chan. One night. After that, we track down Naruto and ask him for protection. Okay, she mentally asked her friend. Nibi sighed in relief. That's fine, kitten. You only need 1 good night's sleep anyways, she replied. Yujito nodded as she stepped into a field and gasped. It was obvious that some battle had taken place here. Earth spikes and patches of burnt grass littered the field, bodies that seemed to have been mangled by some unknown creature, were strewn about the field. But the thing that truly caught Yujito's eye, was the unknown body covered in so many cuts that there was no way his death was painless. That, and his body was amid a small mound of bones. Yujito cautiously approached and noticed one more fact, these bones made up several skeletons. She gasped and took a step back. Nibi-chan. I know you can raise the dead for a time, but do you know any others with that power? She asked her feline friend. Nibi sent a mental shake of her head. Only myself and Shinigami-kun should be able to. I can only guess that someone has been dabbling in forbidden jutsus or god-related abilities. Pray that it is the first, for the second option would fall to a being I do not wish to see again, she commented before going silent. Yujito tried vainly to get a name from her friend, but realized it was fruitless, and she was exhausted, so she quickly made her way to the nearby town of Yoka. As she walked into town, she realized that Nibi was asleep. She smiled softly as she realized that the feline must have stayed awake to keep her company. She shook her head of these thoughts and quickly made her way to the inn where she rented a room, took a shower, and promptly passed out curled up on the bed. Yujito didn't awake until noon the next day. She tried to contact Nibi, but it seemed the Biju was even more tired, or lazy, than Yujito was. The feline female just shrugged, freshened up and checked out of her room, deciding to get some lunch at a quaint little stand she had seen yesterday. She smiled seeing the, obviously, family-run open-air cafe and happily ordered some dango with a side of sake. Remind you of anyone, since they didn't have her favorite sushi. She spent a good 20 minutes enjoying her food, and waiting for Nibi to awaken, when her senses suddenly went haywire. She quickly looked up and around, noticing a mop of golden hair down the street before her attention turned to the squad of Bolt, Kumo's umbu, that landed in the street before her. A man in a snake mask stepped forward. Yujito Nii, you are to return to Kumo immediately to be subjugated to the rule of the Council of Kumo by loyalty seal. If you do not comply, we will have no choice but to force your return, he said calmly, although he was mentally smirking as he knew she would resist and that would give his team the chance to punish the cat bitch. Yujito stiffened and heard 2 things before her jaw dropped. Kitten, today is your lucky day, and, Bakudo no Kyu, Kaki. Way of Binding Number 9, Strike. Time Warp, yesterday, 8 a.m. Yamato had ordered everyone to meet downstairs for 8 a.m. to begin the search for the bandits' camp. Even though Naruto had gotten some information the day before, Yamato had decided to do a full sweep of the village for information and to search to the east. He smiled as he watched Ino, the last of his team, come down the stairs. He waited until she was with the rest of the team and clapped his hands together to get their attention. "Alright team. Shino, Ino, I want you two to sweep the village for information. Ino, you are better with people so Shino will be your backup in case someone gets aggressive," he stated, getting a nod from both members of his team. He turned to Naruto, "You and I will be searching the east based on the information you obtained. I will take the northeast, you will take the southeast, up to 5 miles out, and we will meet up in the village at noon." "Understood?" he asked, getting a nod from the Jinhiriki. "Good." He stood up tall and smiled at his team. "Move out," he said loudly. He smiled as Ino and Shino walked out of the inn and Naruto disappeared in a shunshin before disappearing himself. Naruto smiled as he jumped out of Yoka. This was his first time out of the village and he was rather happy to be away from all the glares that Konoha gave him. Hikari materialized next to him and smiled. "It's good to see you in such a good mood, Naruto-kun. Maybe we should take our time searching so we can capitalize on it," she said, smirking. Naruto chuckled, "As much as I would love to make you walk bow-legged for the rest of the day, these bandits could become a bigger problem, so I'd like to focus on them for now. Our fun will have to wait," he said with a smirk. Hikari pouted. "Fine. So, do you mind if I stay out? It's not often that I'm out in the fresh air," she said, using his denial of sex to get some fresh air. Naruto nodded, smiling. "Sure, Hikari-chan. It'd be nice to have some company. Oh. That reminds me," he said as he stopped. Hikari looked at him curiously until he ran through some hand seals and yelled, "Kuki-yos no jutsu," as he slammed his hand to the ground. A mid-sized brown wolf appeared and looked at Naruto. "You must be our new summoner. I am Komamura. I specialize in fighting and hunting but make a pretty good tracker as well. How may I be of service?" he asked. Naruto smiled. "Perfect. I am currently looking for bandits in the area. Would you please assist me in tracking them and avoiding any traps they may have set?" he asked. Komamura smiled. "Well, as much as a wolf can smile anyways, it would be my pleasure. May I assume the female beside you is your mate?" he asked. Naruto nodded. "Yes. Kitsunheim is definitely my mate. Please give her the same respect you would me," he replied. Komamura nodded and bowed to Hikari. "It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Hikari-san." Hikari smiled and bowed back. Komamura sniffed the air and turned towards the northeast. "I smell humans not too far from here. Please follow me," he said as he jumped to the trees. Hikari and Naruto shared a look before disappearing into the trees as well. Bandit Camp, 10 minutes later. The trio arrived at the camp and took a moment to take it in. To the north was the Dekao River, just as the elder had informed them. To the east was a small cliff, not unscalable by shinobi standards but definitely tall enough to be a problem by civilian or bandit standards. To the west and south, where the trio currently stood, was open forest. Naruto turned to his two companions. "Okay. We need an accurate layout of the camp and an approximate number before we return for noon," he said. Komamura and Hikari nodded. "I'll take the east side, Naruto-kun. I can melt into the cliff face and it'll make me nearly indetectable," she said, gaining a nod from her lover. "I'll take the forested south and west. I work best in the woods and there's no way they will question a wolf being in these areas," Komamura said. Naruto nodded again. "Very well then. That leaves me with the north. Meet back here in 2 hours and we will compile a report and head back to the village in time for lunch. Don't take any unnecessary risks." "Understood?" he asked, getting nods from his two companions. He smiled. "Good, then let's get to work," he said as they all disappeared. 2 hours later, the trio met up. There hadn't been any unforeseen problems so they began with their small meeting. Apparently the biggest tent was right in the middle, although most of the tents seemed to be centered around the north and west, seeing as they offered water and shelter respectively. They each took a stab at the amount of bandits and came up to about 200 bandits. However, Komamura mentioned seeing a man with a black cloak walk towards the big tent. After their short meeting, Naruto dismissed Komamura and nodded to Hikari, who decided to stay out for the fresh air and would return just before they entered the village. They spent the next half hour returning to the village, and just enjoying being alone together. Hikari smiled and kissed him softly on the lips before disappearing into the seal as they approached the village. Naruto landed in a clearing and smiled seeing his sensei and his teammates already waiting for him. He skipped the hellos and quickly jogged up to them. Yamato nodded in his direction as he arrived and said, "Good, let's get some lunch and we can pool our information." His team nodded and Ino directed them to a nearby open cafe. After sitting down and ordering lunch, Yamato cleared his throat. "Okay. Ino, Shino, you two first please," he said. Ino nodded. "We didn't get much out of the villagers. They all seemed to agree that they were based out of the east, but they also kept warning us of a black-cloaked man who could raise the dead. I'm beginning to believe that we should take some stock in these rumors, sensei," she said, with Shino nodding his assent. Yamato nodded. "Very well. I will take that into consideration. I searched the northeast quadrant but found nothing to suggest bandit Ace at Vitae. Naruto, you?" he asked his final student. Naruto smiled. "I found the bandit camp. After spending 2 hours researching it, I made a map and estimate the total number of bandits to be around 200, barring any excess that may not have been there at the time of my reconnaissance. I must note that the man in black seemed to have been entering their command center, so I agree with Ino's assessment of him. We should be wary," he stated as he pulled out a somewhat curdy but effective map. Yamato smiled at the map. "Well done, Naruto. Since you have made a map, any suggestions for taking out the camp?" he asked. Naruto nodded and pointed to the forests. "If we go in under cover of the night, Shino could work his way towards the command tent from this way, using his earth jutsu and Kikaicho to mass effect. Myself and Ino should approach from the north, using the Dekao River for our jutsu. You, however, would be best on the cliff seeing as you have a larger chakra capacity and could use a more devastating earth jutsu to collapse the cliff. This is all assuming that someone triggers an alarm and we have to start fighting using our more flashy techniques," he stated. Shino nodded in assent. "This seems to be a very logical choice of action, Naruto-san," he said. Yamato nodded as well. "Yes, a very well thought out attack plan. I do have the perfect jutsu for that cliff as well, so good planning," he stated. Naruto smiled and nodded. "So will this be the strategy, sensei?" he asked. Yamato nodded. "I want everyone to relax for the afternoon. We will leave at 10 tonight and strike for midnight. Plan for a silent infiltration but be prepared if the shit hits the fan." "Dismissed," he said. His genin nodded and quickly finished their food before setting out. Tonight would be hectic. That night, bandit camp, 11 p.m. Team 10 had arrived without trouble and, after a quick review, had been sent their different ways to set up for their sneak attack. The team had each been given a shinobi headset so they could start the attack in sync. The basic plan was to kill as many as possible in their sleep before someone noticed them. At that time the call of Bring the Rain would be heard and the true battle would begin. Luckily, Yamato had made his team kill innocent bunnies to prepare them for killing. Naruto hadn't needed it considering his childhood but had humored his sensei in any case. Ino and Naruto quietly went over some plans and it was decided that Ino would skim the tents closest to the water, considering her jutsu were all water related, and Naruto would be the one to advance to the inner circles faster seeing as he had some lightning and wind jutsu. Now, they were just waiting for the sign to begin the attack. They had to wait another 10 minutes before their radios crackled to life and their sensei said, "Begin operation," and they both sped off into the camp. Naruto had quickly made his way into the camp, silently dispatching sleeping, or drunk, bandits. He did have Umbu stealth after all. Ino had taken control of one of the guards and had taken out the other guards using her controlled one before jumping into the river and letting the man be washed away in the swift current as she returned to her body. She had then joined Naruto in killing the sleeping bandits, although in her area and not Naruto's. Yamato was sitting atop the cliff. He had sent a Moku Bunshin to take care of his area, although it started closer and so if he had to collapse the cliff, it would cause maximum damage. Shino had silently drained the guards of their chakra slowly and caused them to die from chakra exhaustion. He had sent his colony into many tents, but had killed a few bandits himself since his hive wasn't large enough to cover his entire area. Unfortunately, this seemed to be a bad idea as a few of the bandits had awoken to the bugs and promptly screamed their heads off, until Shino silenced them. Shino, however, sighed as the idiotic bandits had blown their cover and he could see the sentries around the main tent were calling out the alarm. His monotone voice crackled over the radio and said, "My position has been compromised, request permission to bring the rain sensei." Yamato nodded atop the cliff, even if no one could see him, request approved. Everyone, bring the rain, he ordered, receiving a loud, Asa, followed by Suten, Tepidama no Jutsu. Water release, water gun technique. Suten, Suryuadon no Jutsu. Water release, water dragon technique. Doton, Doryaso no Jutsu. Earth release, earth spears technique. Doton, Dokubaku no Jutsu. Earth release, landslide technique. As each of the ninjas used an offensive attack, with Yamato causing the cliff to tumble down on his enemies, destroying nearly 80 bandits in one strike. Needless to say, by the time the 4 jutsu had settled and the ninja could view their handiwork, there were hardly 20 bandits left. They all stood, shaking, at the command tent where a man in a black cloak came outside yelling, "What the hell is going on out here?" He stopped, however, when he noticed Naruto standing over the destroyed remains of his bandit camp. Ino had decided to join with Shino, and Yamato was still heading down from the cliff, so Naruto was on his own for now. "Well, your little group has been preying on innocent travelers for long enough, so we decided to take care of you," Naruto replied calmly. The man narrowed his eyes. "Upstart shinobi, nah." He looked to the bandits. "He can't be more than a genin, kill him," he ordered and walked back into the tent. The bandits hesitated only for a second before they drew various weapons and charged the blonde man. Naruto sighed and ran through some hand seals before slapping his hand to the ground just before the bandits reached him yelling, "Raiden, Kaminari Saji no Jutsu." Lightning release, lightning surge technique, and turning the bandits into crispy human husks. Naruto scrunched up his face and waved his hand. "Damn, I hate the smell," he said as he walked towards the tent. Suddenly he heard, "Harafaya! Hell's fireball," and jumped to the left just as a green fireball burst from the tent and hit the ground where he was standing just seconds before. He raised an eyebrow as he saw the black-cloaked man step out with his hand outstretched and a book in his left hand. The man glared, "I am Jigoku, necromancer of the Third Order. Given power by the Orokai himself to spread his fear throughout the lands. You will die for my glorious master," he said as he launched another green fireball at our blonde hero. By this time, Yamato had joined with Shino and Ino, who were watching the fight, and were getting ready to step in when Naruto held up a hand to them. "This guy is mine. Just make sure no one else interferes," he said. His team nodded, Yamato only giving him the go-ahead because he knew that Naruto wouldn't be beaten easily. "Kage no Boruto, bolt of shadow," Jigoku yelled as a mass of darkness flew from his hand. Naruto's eyes widened and he quickly dropped to the floor, allowing the bolt to pass over him harmlessly. He looked up just in time to hear Jigoku start chanting in a strange language. Naruto's eyes narrowed and he rushed to his feet, released his seals, and nearly jumped when the necromancer cackled maniacally, "Behold the power my lord has bequeathed me. Fujunene Fukatsu." "Impure resurrection," he yelled as 50 of the nearby bodies suddenly were engulfed in a green light and stood up, only to reveal skeletons holding shields and swords. Naruto's, Ino's, and Yamato's eyes widened in horror and you could hear the sound of a fevered buzzing coming from Shino. "Naruto-kun. You need to kill the necromancer to release the souls of the skeletons," Hikari said in his mind, letting him know his duty. Naruto's eyes turned into a strange mixture of oceanic blue and stormy gray. His avatar mark pulsed and he glared at the man that dared to disturb the rest of the dead. "You take the souls of the departed and use them for your own twisted gain. You serve a master that will stop at nothing for his own immortality. You are the worst scum upon this earth. I am the avatar of Susanoo and the chosen of the Anjuin. Your fate has been decided. Rantan, Kami Akari no Hurricane. Storm release, hurricane of divine wrath," Naruto roared as his hand blurred through hand seals in a flash. Even Shino's eyes widened as his team watched a massive funnel of air reach down from the sky and rip the man to shreds, causing the skeletons to waver and crumple to the ground. As the jutsu ended, Naruto's eyes went back to his Enromal bright blue and he blinked. "Hikari-chan, what the hell was that?" he asked his mental lover. "That, Koi, was you accessing your divine right of judgment. Guess Susanoo really likes you to let you activate it so readily," she answered. "Oh. Before you ask, divine judgment activates when something is truly against your morals. So, you activated it because you believe that the dead should rest. As for activating it again, you will have to figure that out on your own," she commented. Naruto mentally nodded and turned back to his team before sighing. This was going to take some explaining. Next day, street in Yoka, noonish. Following their successful raid on the bandit camp, Naruto's team had returned to the inn where he had explained his trials/transformation/mission. Shino had accepted it outright seeing as they were friends, and Yamato and Ino had agreed when shown his celestial features. They had agreed to keep quiet until Orochimaru was a more prevalent problem, although Yamato had come clean about his Mokuton abilities and informed them of Orochimaru's experiments on him. They had been quick to assure their sensei that he was precious to each of them and they had turned in for the night following the assurances, Yamato opting to explain the mission to the elder the next morning without his team so they could get some much-needed rest. Naruto had awoken late and decided to get some lunch. The cafe they had eaten at before had come to mind and he had decided to make his way there, hoping to meet Shino who had already awoken and left. He had quickly gotten dressed and headed downstairs. He let his mind wander as he walked down the street until Hikari had spoken up in his mind, "Naruto-kun, I sense Nibi-chan's chakra signature coming from where we ate yesterday. You should be wary. It's not like she will attack you, but we don't want something bad to happen," she said. Naruto mentally nodded and approached the cafe. He noticed rather pretty feline female stiffen and look around. "Naruto-kun, that is Nibi-chan's container," she informed him, getting a nod from her container. Naruto immediately stiffened as he saw the bolt appear. A man in a snake mask stepped forward. "Ujito Nii, you are to return to Kumo immediately to be subjugated to the rule of the Council of Kumo by loyalty seal. If you do not comply, we will have no choice but to force your return," he said calmly. Naruto scowled and Hikari growled in his mindscape. "Naruto-kun, don't you dare let them take her away," she said. "My sentiments exactly koi," he responded. Bakudo no Kyu, Gaki. Way of binding number 9, strike. Strange name for a binding no. He yelled as the 4 bolt members were encased in a golden film of chakra, disabling their movements. "Yatter yatter, what could you want with a poor defenseless kitty cat?" Naruto asked, adopting an uninterested persona much like Kakashi's as he held the seal that bound the bolt members. The leader, Snake, seemed to frown behind his mask. "Ujito Nii is a rogue ninja of Kumagakuer. Konohagakuer has no jurisdiction," he started. "Au contraire, Snake-san. This is fire country and we do not allow foreign nin inside our borders without the proper passports, so I assume you have said papers and the clearance to retrieve said kitty cat," Naruto said smiling disarmingly. Otherwise, his eyes opened and they were an electric blue that screamed power. "I will have to force you out of my country," he said still smiling despite the threat in his eyes and words. Snake was silent for a moment. "We do not have the passports on us. However, we have evidence that suggests she has been committing illegal acts here in Fire Country and asked to be allowed to apprehend her to stand trial," he replied, trying to change the subject and still get what he wanted. By this time, the civilians had evacuated. Ujito was sitting ramrod straight and glancing nervously between Naruto and the Bolt squad, and Naruto could feel Yamato approaching as he flared his chakra. Ujito was scared. If this man let those Umbu free, she would be caught. Even she couldn't fight off a whole squad of Bolt in a Konoha team. "Calm yourself, kitten. That is Hikari-chan's container. There is no way he'd allow you to be taken so easily. Trust me," the feline in her head said. Ujito sighed and relaxed slightly. "Alright, Nibi-chan. But it doesn't hurt to be prepared," she replied, getting a mental nod from Nibi. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he took a stand between the Bolt and Ujito. "Please tell me this evidence before I release you." "As it stands, you are skating on thin ice being here without passports," he replied. The Snake Man was frustrated but kept his cool. He was in Bolt after all. "Ujito Nii is the Nibi no Nekomate's Jinhiriki. We came across a battlefield not far from here where someone raised the dead. We believe her to be under the control of the Nibi and to have desecrated the graves nearby to use the bodies," he stated. Naruto scowled. "You are mistaken. My team fought a necromancer there just yesterday. He claimed to have been given power by someone known as Orokai. If that is your only evidence, I am afraid that you will have to leave and I will take Ujito Nii into my custody as a shinobi of Konoha. You will have to go through the proper channels to request her return," he said coldly. Yamato arrived just in time to hear the Bolt's evidence and Naruto's explanation. He nodded and stepped forward. "I am the Jounin in charge here. I agree with my student. You will leave this area immediately and return to Kumo or I will report this as an act of aggression to Konoha," he said, gaining a grateful glance from both containers. Snake seemed to glare from behind his mask, as the rest of his team grumbled behind him. "Fine, please let us go so we may return with all due haste," he said. Naruto looked to Yamato, who had joined him in front of Ujito, although he had an eye on both Ujito and the Bolt unit, who nodded. Naruto sighed and dropped into a fighting stance before releasing the unit. They all stumbled for a second before Snake waved his hand, dispersing his unit. He looked back over his shoulder and the Konoha ninja could feel his sneer. "This isn't over demon lovers," he said. Naruto scoffed. "That's not an insult to me, you snake bastard," he yelled to the man, who faltered for a second before continuing his dash out of the village. He, that's one way to throw them off their game, Naruto-kun," Hikari said mirthfully. Naruto just smiled and mentally nodded. "Arigato, Naruto-san. You saved me from a very tight spot," Yujito said softly as he turned around. Naruto smiled brightly. "Think nothing of it, Nico-chan. I wouldn't allow anyone to be put under a loyalty seal, Jinhuriki, or not," he replied. Yujito blushed as Nibi sent several images of the blonde Adonis taking her in different positions but shook her head and smiled. "I am glad to hear that. As for taking me in," she asked, leaving the question hanging. Naruto nodded. "Unfortunately you are missing Nin. However, I have a feeling it's not by choice. Please come with us to explain your situation and we will see what we can do," he said, looking to Yamato, who nodded his assent. He knew Jinhuriki were not easy subjects, and he agreed with Naruto. No one should be subjugated to a loyalty seal. Yamato's room. After arriving back at the inn, Yujito had patiently followed Naruto and Yamato, with urges from Nibi to remain calm. She was glad to have this Naruto guy on her side. She had never seen a technique like the one he used to stop the bold members. They soon arrived at Yamato's room and each took a seat, Yujito sitting in front of the two men. Hikari suddenly materialized outside of Naruto before touching Yujito's head and disappearing again, gaining surprised looks from Yamato and Yujito. Naruto smiled. Hikari-chan just decided she wanted to chat with Nibi-chan. "Please don't worry about it, she won't harm you, Yujito-san. As for information, I would simply like an overview of your life in Kumo and the reason you have fled," he said, gaining a nod from the feline female as she heard the two whispering in the back of her head. Yujito sighed and tuned them out before turning her attention back to her. "Hopeful, friend. Well, to begin, I lead a pretty decent life. I was overcharged or refused service, but I could get by without too much discrimination. This was, in part, due to Killer Bee, my sensei, and the container to the Haxabi, seeing as he has proven himself invaluable in protecting Kumo. However, I am not too well liked in Kumo due to the fact that Nibi-chan was sent into a rampage by one stupid man who demanded that she submit to him before she was to be sealed again. Needless to say, she didn't take that very well. It caused many deaths and property damage. In any event, I was just beginning to gain respect when the council started trying to send me on seduction missions. I did not take too kindly to that, seeing as the missions involved fled, well, any and all of the council members fucking me till I passed out," she said. Naruto growled and his chakra spiked at hearing this but kept silent otherwise to allow Yujito to continue. Yujito sent him a comforting smile seeing his reaction and continued, "Who is Killer Bee's brother, made a rule that I couldn't be sent on frivolous seduction missions. However, they found a way around that and started sending me on missions to major political areas hoping to turn me into some type of slut. I never did sleep with the men, instead I beat the shit out of them to give me what I wanted," she said with a smirk, gaining a smile from her fellow container, and surprisingly one from Yamato as well. She took a big breath and decided to get down to the nitty-gritty. "They frequently asserted that I was a flight risk because I have no familial ties to the village and constantly tried to prove that I was disloyal to my village. All this was to finally pass the petition to put me under the loyalty seal, which was really just an excuse to turn me into nothing more than a whore for the council. I really don't know why they targeted me, but I happened to return early from a mission and saw that bold squad meet with some of the council to trap me and put the seal on regardless of the Raikage's approval, which prompted my flight. Nibi-chan recommended finding Naruto-san seeing as he may be able to protect me, if he wishes," she finished, getting another growl from Naruto and his eyes turning that same stormy gray/oceanic blue as yesterday. Yamato nodded. "You are more than welcome to seek asylum in Konoha. I believe it would be a good idea to request Naruto's support seeing as he has recently established a clan," he commented. Yujito turned to Naruto with big pup, kitten eyes and said, "Would you please help me?" Naruto smiled. "Of course, as of right now, you are under the Namikaze family's protection. Please relax and don't worry about Kumo. I will deal with them," he stated. Yujito smiled brightly and jumped him, hugging him happily, saying thank you, over and over again. Naruto chuckled. "No problem. Yamato-sensei, may I request that we leave early to get this situation under control back in Konoha before the Bolt team returns, he asked. Yamato nodded and disappeared to collect the rest of his team. Yujito suddenly stepped back and sat down, blushing furiously, muttering something about perverted foxes and cats. Naruto chuckled and Yujito adopted a nervous look. I appreciate the protection, but not all of Kumo is bad. Killer Bee, Itadaki, Karui, Amwa, and Samui, who are Killer Bee's squad, are all really good friends of mine. If they want to come visit, can they? She asked. Naruto smiled and Hikari appeared next to her, quickly glomping her. Of course they can. The more the merrier. Hikari said. Naruto chuckled, and don't start questioning why I'm helping you. First, I couldn't live with myself if I let you become nothing more than a, well, you get the idea. He said, frowning at the end cause he hated that with a passion. Second, us Jinhuriki have to stick together. Third, if I didn't offer to help, my girls would kick my ass from here to IWA and back, he said with a smile. Hikari chuckled and wrapped one arm around Yujito, whilst Yujito giggled at them. Damn straight we would, she said loudly. Naruto just shook his head and waited for his sensei to return as the two girls started chatting. The next few months would probably be hectic. Kami's court, same time. A silver flash appeared and then settled down to reveal two beings. One with long red hair and beautiful jade green eyes. The other, Ryujin, standing tall and smiling. He bowed to Kami. I have retrieved Kushina Uzumaki, my lady, he said. Kami nodded. Good work, she said happily. She focused her gaze on Kushina. We have much to discuss, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, and you have a very important decision to make, she said, gaining a hard look from the woman. Kushina looked around and then back at Kami before saying, where am I? Kami raised an eyebrow and looked to Ryujin, who sighed, I am sorry, my lady. I thought it best to bring her here as soon as possible. If you require me to explain, I will be happy to do so, he said, bowing. Kami shook her head. I understand, good choice. Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. Could you please tell me what you remember after your birthing of Naruto, she asked kindly. Kushina's face scrunched up in concentration. I had just given birth and Minato wanted to seal Kyuubi into Naruto. I eventually caved and let him take Naruto away. As the Kyuubi appeared, someone in a spiral mask showed up and attacked me. I got lucky and was able to kill him, but he sent me to some type of dimension from my guess. Her eyes went wide and she looked at Kami frantically. It's been 13 years since that day. Oh my Kami. Naruto? Who watched over him? Who? She never got to finish as Kami raised a hand and Kushina felt compelled to stop. Kami's face was kind but it held a deep sadness. I will answer all of your questions, so long as you answer mine first, she said. Kushina was silent for a moment before nodding. Whoever this woman was obviously held enough power to rescue her, and to put her back if she disobeyed. Good, how do you know it has been 13 years, she asked. Kushina's face scrunched again. I was somewhat awake in the dimension. There was this pulse that I could feel would appear about once a day, at least that was what I thought, so I counted them each time it appeared. It accumulated into something close to 13 years. Kami nodded but Kushina continued as if she hadn't seen her. I can remember thinking about Naruto all the time. I always wondered if he was okay, if he had someone to care for him. Did he grow up to be like me or his father? Is he a good man? Or did the village drive him insane? Her face became crestfallen. How I failed him by not being there. I failed at being the mother I was supposed to be. How? She never finished again as a black-haired woman appeared in her downcast gaze and glared at her with such vehemence Kushina was struck speechless. Yami's face was twisted in rage. You failed him? Don't be so quick to judge yourself, Kushina. You thought about him every day for 13 years. You cared not for your own life, but for Naruto's, she said fiercely. Kushina looked grateful, but that soon changed. Yes, you failed as his mother. But it was not by your choice or power, she said confidently, whilst staring into the woman's eyes. Kami cleared her throat. I believe I should answer your questions. You have answered what I needed to know. I believe the best way to start would be to say that Naruto indeed grew up to be a fine young man. Kushina smiled softly hearing that. Hell, just being himself he's already snared 4 girls' hearts and I have a feeling that he will be snaring 3 more, she said, causing Kushina to nearly go into protective mother mode. When Kami raised her hand again, not to worry, he is not a pervert, well except when it's acceptable, and the girls get to confirm or deny new additions to his little group, she said, causing Kushina to calm down. Kushina looked down before her voice carried out over the court. What was his life like? She looked up at Kami with tears in her eyes. Please tell me someone took care of him, she said, practically pleading. Kami sighed and her eyes saddened once again. I am afraid not, Kushina-san, she said, causing Kushina's face to fall. Before we get into that, I have a proposition for you. Will you hear me out? She asked. Kushina nodded warily. Good. First, I am Kami and you are in my court, she said. Kushina's jaw dropped and she gave her a disbelieving look. If you're Kami, then I'm really a flaming jalapeno, she said. Suddenly Kushina found herself on fire and looking distinctly like a jalapeno. As quickly as it appeared, it was gone and Kushina looked at Kami with her jaw nearly dislocated. Kami chuckled. You said it, not me, she said, smirking, along with every god/goddess there. Believe me now, she asked, getting a stunned head nod from the redhead. Good. Second, Naruto no longer has need of a mother figure, or parental figure for that matter, in his life. Accept that and move on, she said sternly. Kushina's eyes narrowed. I may not have been there, but that doesn't make him any less my son, she replied. Kami sighed. Truly? You are gone for 13 years and then just show up and expect him to accept you as his mother? It may not be your fault, but you can no longer claim the title of Naruto's mother. If you even try, I promise you will fail. And I do not break my promises, she said forcefully. Kushina nearly took a step back at the pure belief and power behind that, but she still didn't want to back down. Kami saw this and sighed again. Look, I am going to let you view his life. If, after that, you still believe he will accept you as his mother, then I will allow you to try, she said, gaining a hopeful look from Kushina. However, Kami's voice and face turned grave. If you fail, I will wipe his memory of you and send you to the afterlife myself, she said. Kushina gulped and nodded. I understand, Kami-sama, she replied. Kami nodded, her face returning to the kind smile from before. Good. Lastly, should you wish it, I will allow you the chance to be with Naruto in an intimate fashion. If you cannot be a mother, then why not be a lover, she asked, getting a bewildered look from Kushina. Just think about it, go view his life. When you're done, return here so we may talk more, she said, waving her hand, causing an angel to appear and lead Kushina away. Yami turned to her sister. You just love playing matchmaker as much as I do, huh? She asked. Kami giggled like a little schoolgirl. Maybe, she said, smiling. Yami shook her head before shrugging her shoulders. What the hell, I'm in, she said, making many of the lesser gods and goddesses gulp nervously. It was never a good thing for them when Kami and Yami agreed on something. /n, to summarize, Kushina was sent to a pocket dimension. She did not age physically, however she was aware of the passage of time. Please keep this in mind. Konoha, 2 days after meeting Yujito, 8 p.m. Team 10 had hightailed it back to Konoha to run damage control before Kumo could interfere. Luckily, they were faster in returning than the Kumo team and had made it to the gates within 2 days. Team 10 landed at the gate, guarded by the immortal Chunin Kotetsu and Izumo, and Yamato stepped forward. We need you to send a message to the Hokage. We need a meeting with him right away, he said seriously. Kotetsu nodded and disappeared. Kotetsu will deliver the message. Hurry there and you will have to take responsibility for that cutie over there. Izumo said, motioning to Yujito. Naruto nodded. She is under my protection. I will take full responsibility for her, he replied, getting a nod from Izumo. Yamato motioned to his team and they sped off, Yujito hot on their heels. They soon arrived at the Hokage's office and were quickly ushered in. Sarutobi still sat behind the desk, but Tsunade stood to the side, getting ready for her position, no doubt. Sarutobi raised an eye at Yujito's presence but ignored it and focused his eyes on Yamato. Report, he ordered. Yamato nodded. The bandits have been neutralized. We encountered little difficulty with the bandits themselves, however Naruto was forced to fight I can't believe I am saying this, but a necromancer, sir. He expelled a green light and raised several of the bandits' corpses into skeleton warriors. He claimed to have been given power by someone called Orokai, sir, he said. Both Tsunade and Sarutobi were surprised and it showed. That is quite the story. I assume Naruto-kun was able to beat him? Tsunade asked. Yamato nodded, yes. He seems to have used part of his bloodline to do so. In any case, this is Yujito Nii. She was formerly a jounin with Kumagakure but fled due to unreasonable circumstances, he said. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. These unreasonable circumstances better be supremely unreasonable to constitute desertion, she said seriously. Naruto stepped forward. I assure you, they are Baa-chan, he said, getting a twitch from Tsunade. He looked to Yujito who nodded. The Kumo Council has been trying to make her be their loyal. Well, there's no easy way to put this, so they have been trying to make her be their willing cum dump, he said, making the last two words sound like trash in his mouth. The uninformed members of Team 10 and Tsunade gasped, while Sarutobi had a downright murderous look on his face. Well, that won't be happening. I officially offer you sanctuary and protection within the borders of Hinokuni. Sarutobi said. Naruto beamed at his grandfather. Thanks, Jiji. I might wanna mention that she's also the container for the Nibi no Nikomata and I offered her a place in my compound. That's part of the reason they were so adamant about what he said, still seeing the murderous look on his grandfather's face, although it was joined by Ino's and Tsunade's. Sarutobi nodded, and Tsunade smiled. Good thinking, Naruto-kun. I assume this is acceptable to you, Nii-san, the Sandaime asked. Yujito nodded. Yes, very much so. Thank you both for this. I don't think I can repay you, she said, smiling. Sarutobi chuckled good-naturedly. I'm sure you will find some way to, young lady. You are all dismissed. I will handle this situation as my last act as Hokage. Tsunade will take over after that, he said. Team 10 and Yujito nodded before they all left and went their separate ways. Naruto making his way to the compound at high speeds with Yujito behind. Yujito sped up and started to run alongside him. So, is there anyone else living with you? She asked. Naruto smiled. Well, there's Hikari-chan, of course. Anko-chan, Amaterasu-chan, and Hana-chan. You will be the fifth woman in the house. The only real rules we have are to pick up after yourself and try not to disturb the others. You will be on the second floor, considering the third is my bedroom. The first floor has a private onsen, kitchen, living room, dojo, and in the back, a training ground. Any questions? He asked. Ask him if he'd let you sleep in his bed tonight. Nibi interjected. Yujito blushed. Nibi, she replied. Only one, she said, still blushing. Naruto raised an eyebrow but kept silent. Are all of the girls, your lovers? She asked. Naruto chuckled good-naturedly. Well, not yet. I've made love to Hikari-chan. I plan to do the same to Anko-chan sometime soon, but Hana-chan and Ami-chan both want to get to know me better before that happens. I promise to put up silencing seals if that's what you're worried about, he said, concerned. Considerate and sexy. Why aren't you jumping him again? Nibi asked. Nibi, shut it. I'm not in the mood to deal with your pervertedness. Yujito replied. Thanks for being considerate. But, that wasn't what I was worried about, she said. Naruto nodded. All right. I'm sure you will get along with them just fine, he said, smiling warmly. Yujito couldn't help but smile back. Namikaze compound, 5 minutes later. As Naruto stepped into the compound, Hikari materialized next to him and he yelled, I'm home, smiling. Anko suddenly appeared and glomped him, followed quickly by Hana, and Amaterasu was the last, although she gave him a pretty heated kiss. Anko Wolf whistled. Eat his tongue while you're at it, Wolfie, she said teasingly, causing Amaterasu to back up, blushing madly. Naruto chuckled. Enough. I want to introduce Yujito Nii. She will be staying with us for the foreseeable future. She is the container of the Nibi no Nikomata and is escaping from Kumo. If you want specifics, ask her, because I'm tired of explaining it and getting my blood boiling. Naruto said. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a dip in the hot springs and then call it a night, he said before turning to Yujito. Make yourself at home. I'm sure the girls will be more than happy to help you, he said, getting devious smirks from Hikari and Anko. Hana shook her head and Nibi commented, Kitten, whatever you do, don't believe those two. Yujito mentally nodded and Hana stepped forward. I'll help you find a room. Knowing these two, she said, jabbing a finger to the two prankster queens, they'd probably put you in Naruto-kun's room. Anyways, I'm Hana and Yazuka. Pleased to meet you, she said, smiling. Yujito smiled back. Yujito Nii, as you heard. Thanks for the help, she said as she walked upstairs with the feral female. Hana shook her head as they leveled out on the second floor. It's my pleasure. Take the middle door on the left. I'm the first. The right side has Hikari, then Anko, then Amaterasu. I'll leave you to unpack. I want to take a bath as well, she said, slipping into her room. Yujito walked into her room and smiled. There was a bed, a dresser, and a small bathroom. It was cozy. Perfect for her, so she just unpacked, taking her time. Before she realized it, 2 hours had passed, and someone was knocking at her door. "Who is it?" she asked politely. Hikari's voice drifted through the door. "It's me, could I speak with you?" she asked. Yujito smiled. "Yes, come on in," she replied. Hikari opened the door and stepped in smiling. She glanced around the room and nodded. "I see you really took Naruto-kun's advice. The cat plus highs are rather cute," she said smirking. Yujito blushed. She had around 20 cat plus highs on her bed. Nibby just wouldn't shut up, so she had bought a few and found them to be rather fun to collect, so she ended up with a whole collection. "It's all Nibby's fault," Yujito said, mentally smirking as the cat demon was asleep. Hikari chuckled. "I have no doubt," she replied. There was an awkward silence before Hikari spoke up somewhat nervously. "Listen, you are more than welcome to stay here, but I want to let you know that every girl here has feelings for Naruto-kun. In conjunction with that, each one of them was approved by me, and later by the others in Vofled, namely Anko for Hana and all 3 of us for Amaterasu. If you decide to pursue a relationship with Naruto-kun, please let me know in advance. I am the alpha here and I will try to help. Nibby-chan is a pretty good friend of mine after all. If it comes spur of the moment, well, that's fine too. Just let me know ASAP," she said smiling softly. Yujito blushed. "Look, not that I don't appreciate it, but I don't know if I want a relationship with a guy who's going to have a harem. I want a guy who will pay attention to my needs, as well as his own, and I'm just not sure he, or any man, could do that," she stated. Hikari's eyes were steely but they softened slightly. "I see. You will come to learn of Naruto-kun's character. I assure you, your fears are unfounded. In any case, I understand your point and will concede them." Hikari let a pregnant pause fill the room before continuing, "For now. Good night, Yujito-san," Hikari said, standing and walking out of the room. Yujito stared a bit puzzled for a moment before shaking her head and getting ready for bed. No guy could really handle that many women at once, could he? She thought as she fell asleep. Kami's court, 3 days later. Kushina was practically wearing a hole in the floor in front of the doors to Kami court with all her furious pacing. She had spent the past 3 days watching Naruto's life and, like every other person who had seen it, was pissed beyond belief. The village hadn't honored Minato's wishes in the slightest. Hell, they downright spit on it. She had kept Kami's last comment in mind while watching him interact with Kyuubi and Anko, and to a lesser extent with Hana and Amaterasu. She could honestly say that Naruto was a great man, and she would be honored to be with him. But she still knew that he was her son, and that was throwing all intimate thoughts out the window. The doors opened and she had to take a deep breath before walking in. All of the gods and goddess, sans Amaterasu for obvious reasons, were in attendance. Kushina approached Kami with steely eyes. "Thank you for letting me see that. Now I know who to kill when I go back," she said harshly. Kami sighed. "That wasn't the point of showing you." "Did you keep in mind what I said?" she asked. Kushina nodded. "I did, but I still fail to see why I can't be his mother," she replied. Yami rolled her eyes. "Are you blind, or just plain ignorant?" she asked, getting a growl from Kushina. "He grew up all alone till he was 10. He stopped asking for someone to take care of him when he was 6, after he learned about seals. He may only be 13 in standard years, but his mind is that of at least a 30-year-old, and his current body is 18. He is far past his formative years and he does not need a mother, nor father. Should you attempt to become his mother now, he would reject you fiercely because you were never there for his childhood," she stated. Kushina frowned, guilt-forming, "But it wasn't my fault. I don't have the skills to escape a pocket dimension," she said. Kami shook her head sadly. "That doesn't matter. What does matter is that he no longer needs a mother, and you attempting to be his would not work. The bond between mother and child is formed from being there and taking care of the child every day of their childhood. Naruto does not have that bond, and he has forsaken any attempt at making one. All because of the abuse he suffered. That is why it will not work," she said, punctuating her words at the end. Kushina silently went over her options, and there weren't many. She knew she wanted to be a part of Naruto's life, and she knew what they were saying was true. However, she remembered giving birth to him. How could she abandon her morals and sleep with her son? She just couldn't wrap her head around it. She shook her head again. Kami sighed. "Yet again, Kushina, I tire of arguing with you. You have two choices set before you. The first, attempt to be a mother to Naruto and fail. You know you will, I know you will, that is all that matters. The second, opt to be his lover. You will be with him in an intimate level similar to that of a mother, but on an even deeper level. Should you choose the second option, I will personally change your DNA to ensure nothing relates you to him anymore. As it stands, there is maybe 1% of your DNA left in his body. Make your choice, she said, giving her ultimatum. Kushina's eyes were wide with fright and a million thoughts went through her head before one stuck out. What would Minato say, she thought. I wish to speak with Minato. I will give my answer after that, she said. Kami was silent for a moment before nodding. Very well. Shinigami, please retrieve Minato Namikaze's soul and allow him to speak with Kushina, she said, getting a nod from Death Incarnate before turning back to the red-haired woman. You will have till the end of the day to speak with him. After that, I will wait no longer. Naruto needs his support now, before the true storm hits, and to delay it any longer would be detrimental to him, and our plans, she stated. Kushina nodded and a bright flash of light filled the room. Kushina blinked to rid herself of spots and smiled brightly before running and glomping her deceased husband. Minato-kun, she yelled. Minato caught her and spun her around smiling brightly. Kushi-chan. What's going on, he asked, his demeanor changing from happy to curious in a second. He suddenly found himself on the wrong end of Kushina's fist. That was for condemning our son to a life of hell, she yelled, as Minato was bent over her fist. Minato stumbled back and caught his breath. What? Weren't you there? What about our friends? Sarutobi-sama and Ero Sennin, he asked. Kushina growled and grabbed his ear, dragging him out anime style. You and I have a lot to talk about and not enough time. Move your ass, mister, she said as they disappeared out the doors. Kami chuckled. I dearly hope she takes my offer. She and Hikari would make quite the pair for Naruto, she said, smirking devilishly. Yami smiled. My sister, I thought I was the evil one, she asked, getting a laugh from her white-haired counterpart. Namikaze Estates, same day, 8 a.m. Naruto awoke to the sound of someone knocking on his door. He groaned as he moved out from between Anko and Hikari, who both snuggled closer to one another to make up for the lack of warmth. He rubbed the bleariness from his eyes and opened his door, clad in nothing but his boxers with his celestial features showing because the girls liked to pet them before resting. Yujito, who happened to be at the door, got the full view and looked him from head to toe, taking in the sculpted muscles and the obvious mark of a kuwabai on his neck. She gulped as she felt heat rising to her face. Unfortunately for her, Nibi chose this time to wake up. Oh kitten. Look at those muscles. And those extra features just add to it. Don't you just want to tear off his shorts and ride him till you're sore for the next few days, she asked while sending images of Yujito bouncing wildly on Naruto straight into her mind's eye. Nabi. Yujito roared in her mind. Naruto yawned. What's up, Yujito-chan? It's kinda early and today is my day off, he said. Yujito was still blushing, but she was able to shut up Nibi long enough to respond. Anumbu appeared at the front gate and said that the Hokage requested you and me in the council chambers. Apparently, Kyumo has sent their response to our actions, she said. Naruto nodded, now fully awake. Okay then, I'll get dressed and we can head out. Are you ready? He asked, getting a nod from the feline female. He nodded and closed the door, going to get ready himself. Not a second after the door closing, Nibi was, once again, sending several images of Yujito being pleasured by our blonde hero in rapid succession. Nibi, cut that out. What is up with you? You were always perverted, but you were never this pushy. Yujito said as she leaned against the wall, waiting for Naruto. That's true, but you won't find a stronger mate than Naruto-kun. If he can claim not only Hikari-chan, but Ami-chan as well, then he definitely has to be something. Besides that, he's a Jinhuriki too, so that speaks volumes for his willpower, because you know how Jinhuriki are treated. His body is just a bonus, she replied. Just as Yujito was about to retort, Naruto opened the door and stepped out, dressed in his usual attire with the haori. He smiled at her. Ready to go? He asked. She nodded and he grabbed her before they disappeared in a shunshin. Council chambers, 8:15 a.m. The clan heads and the Hokage were all in attendance and awaiting Naruto and Yujito's arrival to start the meeting. Since this could cause widespread difficulty to Konoha, Sarutobi had informed the clans as to what was going on, and they all seemed to support his decision. However, they still needed to play the political game, so they had agreed to talk about Kumo's response and to take into account what could happen should she stay or be sent back. Naruto and Yujito soon appeared and Sarutobi smiled warmly at them. "Good to see you, Naruto-kun. I'm glad you got here so soon," he said. Naruto nodded. "Let's skip the pleasantries, Jiji. I got woken up for this, so let's get down to Kumo's response," he said. Sarutobi nodded. "Very well," he said and motioned to the scroll in his hand. "I have read the scroll and will now read it aloud for all of you to hear. I would like to hear the different clan heads' opinion on Kumo's response, and then we will debate on the best course of action. However, remember that I hold the final decision here," he said, gaining nods from the clan heads, although Hayashi was reluctant to do so. "Dear Hiruzen Sarutobi, Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakure. The Council of Kyumigakure has become aware that a kunoichi of Kyumigakure has been apprehended by one of your ninja, namely Naruto Uzumaki. This kunoichi, Yujito Nii, is a missing nin, and we would happily pay a sum of 1 million yen to have her returned to us alive. If this is not acceptable, please reply with an offer for the return of this kunoichi, alive. We are not limited to only monetary compensation. However, if you deem her your prisoner, we must inform you that she is an asset to our village, and we would be very displeased to learn that your village has denied our request for the return of a known fugitive. She has friends and family here who would be greatly disappointed to see her leave. Unfortunately, the great village of Kyumigakure will not allow her to escape so easily, and our taxes are coming up to vote soon. We sincerely hope you will do what is right. Signed. The Honorable Council of Kyumigakure." Sarutobi finished saying. Everyone was quiet for a moment until Tsum spoke up. "They have quite the gall to both sweet-talk you and threaten us at the same time," she said seriously. Shivi pushed up his glasses. "Indeed, Tsum-san. I must point out that we get much of our chakra-conducting metal from Kumo's miners, seeing as IWA is unfavorable to us. A rise in tax would be quite detrimental," he said monotonously. Shikaku muttered a soft, "Mendicus. I agree with both of them, however, I could not allow anyone to be returned simply to be forced into slavery," he said. Sarutobi nodded. "Yes, I agree with Shikaku as well. However, Yujito-san," he said, gaining her attention. "I noticed that this seems to be the council only. Would the Raikage happen to be a supporter of yours?" he asked. Yujito nodded. He has always supported me. His brother, Killer B, helped me learn to control Nibi. I would say he is a large part of why I have lasted this long," she said. Everyone could see the wheels turning in Sarutobi's head, and Naruto smirked. "What you got, Jiji?" he asked. Sarutobi's smile could have matched Naruto's famous one. "Perhaps I have one last trick up my sleeve. I shall send a message to the Raikage straight away and see if he, or a delegation, can come to meet with me, Naruto-kun, and Yujito-chan to sort out this situation. I am sure he would be most interested in his council's actions," he said, gaining chuckles across the room. Hayashi had remained silent throughout the proceedings, but now he had enough. "Hokage-sama. Did you forget that the last Raikage not only attempted to steal the Byakugan, but nearly seized and demanded my brother as payment?" he asked. Sarutobi's eyes steeled. "No, I have not. However, this Raikage is much more moral than the previous one, or have you forgotten our intelligence on the small civil war after that attempt?" he asked, causing Hayashi to sit and simmer. "I understand your mistrust, Hayashi-san. However, this is important. If we win this, we will gain a new demon container, and possibly an alliance with Kumo," he said. Hayashi nearly opened his mouth, but twin glares from Naruto and Sarutobi shut him up. "Good, meeting adjourned," he said as everyone began to file out. Namikaze Estates, 9:30 a.m. By the time Naruto and Yujito had returned, everyone was awake. They gathered in the living room to discuss Yujito's situation. After Naruto had explained Sarutobi's response, Amaterasu was the first to speak. "So, if he sends a delegation, who would be the best to get you to return freely?" she asked the feline female. Yujito thought for a moment. "Samui, my self-proclaimed sister, and her team of Karui Inamwa would have the best chance. Killer B and A.E. himself would be a close second, but anyone else would have to fight me to go back," she replied. Amaterasu nodded and Hana spoke up. "So, would you have a problem going against them if they are adamant in bringing you back?" she asked, genuinely concerned. Yujito thought once again, but Nibi spoke up in her mind. "Kitten, I know you hate to disappoint them, but if you return, it is not a matter of if the council will get you. It will be a matter of when." You can only go without sleep for so long, and your friends and family are only human, she said, speaking logic. Yujito nodded mentally and steeled herself. I would rather not have to fight them. I don't honestly think I could hurt them, she said, getting a frown from Hikari and Anko. Although Naruto stayed passive throughout her explanations, however, I am definitely capable of arguing for my safety. I will not leave without an argument, and definitely without some form of resistance, she said confidently. Everyone nodded and the frowns disappeared from Anko and Hikari. Naruto clapped his hands together. Very well then. Yujito is under our protection whilst here. If she does not inform me personally of her wish to return to Kumo, then we will assume she has been kidnapped and shall set out immediately to protect her, he said, getting nods and happy smiles from his girls. He looked to Yujito. I will not stand against you should you return, however, please remember that you left for a reason, and I will protect you should you remain here. As I said, should you fail to personally inform me of your departure, then we shall follow an attempt to retrieve you, he said, smiling warmly at her. Yujito blushed slightly and nodded. What have we here? I thought you wanted a man who would pay attention to your needs, and Naruto-kun couldn't be that man. Nibi spoke teasingly. Yujito shook her head and adopted a hard visage. I have to ask, why would you go to such lengths for me? And, aside from that, why would you force your friends, and lovers, to chase after me, she asked. Naruto frowned, as did all of his girls. You are a Jainishu Uraki, like me. I understand what it's like to be ostracized and hated for something out of your control. Besides that, I would never allow someone to be put under a loyalty seal. As for the girls, they would follow me regardless if I told them not to. I simply included them because I already knew they would chase you, he said. Anko spoke up, her eyes smoldering with anger. And how dare you insinuate that Naruto-kun would force us to do anything? I've known him for 3 years now and not once has he ever forced me to do something. Hell, he's never even asked me to do something I wouldn't like, she said angrily, shocking Yujito. Hana frowned. While Anko is correct, I think you should get to know someone before you insinuate something about them. I won't hold it against you, but don't think that Anko and Hikari-chan won't. They are very protective of him, she stated, causing Yujito to lock eyes with the two mentioned and turn away from the anger radiating at her. Naruto sighed. Hikari, Anko, enough, he said, causing them both to adopt a sad look. She didn't know. I doubt she has any experience with a decent man considering her life, he said, before turning a gaze to Yujito. However, don't think I am the same as most guys. I would go to hell and back for each of these girls, and I'm pretty sure they'd do the same for me, he said, before standing and calmly walking out back to the training grounds. Hikari and Anko sent her withering glares and followed Naruto, hoping to be of some help. Well, that was a royal screw-up kitten. Nibi commented. Nibi, shut up. I'm not in the mood to talk right now. Yujito replied, her anger at herself along with the threatening feeling of having Naruto's girls glaring at her shortening her proverbial anger fuse. Yujito blinked and found herself standing in front of her flaming feline companion. The look on her face would be frightening to anyone, but only Yujito could pick up on the more than usual amount of bloodlust coming from her Baijuyu. That's too bad, kitten, Nibi started as she paused for effect, because I didn't help you escape only to have you insult the only one who could keep us safe. Naruto-kun is a great man. Hikari herself told me his life story, and, let me just say, yours is all sunshine and rainbows compared to his first few years. Nibi said as she glared down at her container, disappointed with her actions against the only one to have kept her completely safe. He may be strong and caring, but I still don't believe he can attend to all of his lover's needs. No man can. Yujito started. Yujito never got to finish as Nibi slammed a paw against her cage, rattling the whole mindscape. Kitten, don't insult his heart. Hikari-chan is one of the few friends I have as a Biju. Nibi stated, fiery determination and belief in Naruto fueling her words. I take her word close to that of Shinigami-sama's himself. She has spoken highly of him, and his heart. I do not know why you are so adamant about insulting him, and his loves. Nibi paused again while sending another heated glare at her container before finishing in a softer tone, but you need to seriously think about why you are the feline Biju said before flinging her back out of her mind. Yujito came to and noticed that there was a note of the table. It was from Amaterasu and told her to stay away from Hikari and Anko until both she and they cooled off. She frowned as she felt guilt and embarrassment take root in her chest, and she immediately walked upstairs to sort out her feelings, and why she was so confused by Naruto's actions, and why she was so threatened by the girls surrounding him. With Naruto, he had stalked outside only to unseal the notes on elemental manipulation and set to work. He sent 300 clones for lightning and 300 for wind before beginning his usual workout routine. He wasn't really mad at Yujito, more like disappointed that she jumped to a conclusion just because he was male. Now, he could equate it to the way the villagers treated him, but he knew better. She had just fled her home, she had no friends, and she was probably accosted by males all the time. He would let it slide, but only for a time. If things got too bad, he would have to separate her from his girls and keep an eye on her from a distance. He did promise to protect her after all. Hikari and Anko were watching him, but he made no move to invite them to join him. He wanted to be alone for now. He stopped after finishing his push-ups and smiled at them, visibly letting them know that he was okay. They smiled back and he made a playful shooing motion with his hand that caused them to pout but comply and leave him be. He smiled and went back to his workout. He needed to get stronger, he had neglected himself trying to fix Konoha. It was time to really earn the title, Kiro Isenko no Konohagakuer. Kami's court, end of the day. Kushina and Minato stood before Kami, one about to make the biggest decision of her life, and the other there to support her. Kushina had spent all morning explaining Naruto's life to Minato. Needless to say, he was just about ready to go Kyuubi on their asses, but was stopped by Kushina when she explained Naruto's discovery of his paternal heritage, and the subsequent declaration he made to his girlfriends. Kushina had then gone on to describe the various seals he created, using Minato's teachings to their fullest. Minato had been so proud, he had nearly cried. When Kushina had started in on having, currently, 4 girls, well, he really had cried. After all, it's not every day you get to see your son legally have a harem of girls who love him. That had, however, led them into a very uncomfortable discussion. Namely, Kami's offer to Kushina. Minato had been silent as she explained her reasoning, and Ryujin showing up and explaining Kami's offer, along with her reasoning. Minato had been very conflicted as he didn't know what to say. This, however, had taken up all of the afternoon and nighttime because Ryujin and Kushina had ended up arguing vehemently for their sides, Ryujin for Kami and Kushina for her own. Kushina had been unable to ask Minato his opinion before they had been called before Kami's court yet again. Minato, for his part, was still thinking on it and finally made his decision as they walked through the doors. Kami smiled softly at the both of them and turned to Kushina. "Have you made your decision, Kushina?" she asked. Kushina glanced around nervously. She knew that trying to be Naruto's mother wouldn't work, talking with both Ryujin and explaining his life to Minato made that clear to her. But she just didn't know if she could view him as a lover, and not her son. Minato stepped forward. "Kami-sama. May I speak?" he asked respectfully. Kami nodded and he smiled saying, "Thank you." He turned to Kushina and smiled warmly. "Kushina-chan. I am dead. I sacrificed myself to save Konohagakuer and I will reside forever in the Shinigami's stomach for it. That was a mistake. They ignored my final wishes and have treated our son like garbage. While you hold no part of the blame for it, the fact remains that you weren't there. As it stands now, you have a chance to be something special. Naruto has grown immensely in such a short time, and he never really had a childhood. I have a favor to ask of you, if you would indulge a foolish Hokage, and a horrible father," he said, smiling bitterly at the end. Everyone was silent, rather shocked at his words. Kushina shakily nodded her head. "Good. I want you to accept Kami-sama's offer." He raised a hand to stay her immediate retort. "Hear me out. Kami-sama's points are more valid than yours. Not to say yours have no merit, more that they do nothing but keep you from our son. If I had the chance to be with him, even if it was nothing more than friendship, I would leap at it and hold on forever. I am asking you, please don't let Naruto slip from your hands again. I was the one to take him from you last time," he said, taking her hands in his. He folded them and pressed them over her heart. "This time, I want to give him to you forever," he said, smiling. Kushina was shell-shocked for a moment before she closed her eyes and smiled softly, one tear slipping down each of her cheeks. Alright. I'll do it," she said softly. Kami smiled brightly. "I am happy to hear that, Kushina-chan. Thank you for your words of wisdom, Minato Namikaze," she said, acknowledging his part in her decision. Kushina wiped the tears from her eyes and turned to Kami. A new determination blazing in her eyes. When do I get to meet my future lover? She asked. Kami chuckled. Soon. First I have a gift for you, she said, waving her hand, causing a summoning scroll to appear. It held ornate golden designs on it, but the biggest thing was the red phoenix adorning the scroll paper. The Phoenix Summoning Contract. Would you like the honor of being the first Phoenix Sennin? She asked, chuckling at the owl eyes that Kushina had. Kami suddenly found herself tackled by the exuberant redhead and smiled. Thank you. Kushina yelled before detaching herself and grabbing the scroll. She quickly signed it and smiled at Kami. Kami chuckled again. One last thing before I send you to Naruto-kun, she said before tapping Kushina on the head and causing the woman's eyes to glow and her natural green color to disappear, being replaced by a brilliant gold. I have changed your DNA now. I hope you enjoy your new bloodline, she said, smirking. Kushina opened her mouth, but Kami snapped her fingers because she felt one of the most powerful goddesses quickly approaching and she seemed pissed. Kushina disappeared just as Destiny came bursting into the room. Alright, who added Nibi-chan and Kushina-chan to Naruto-kun's harem? She roared as she looked around the room. Every god and goddess, sans Yami and Shinigami, who were whistling innocently, blinked dolishly. Destiny noticed the two calmer/nervous gods and glared at them. Didn't I tell you to stop messing with my plans? Do you have any idea how long it's going to take me to recalculate the rest of the universe for that? She roared, going off on both immortals. Minato turned to Kami. Is it always this hectic around here? He asked. She shook her head. Oh no, your son has caused more havoc in 13 years than Orokai did in centuries. You should ask Shinai-kun to let you do his paperwork. You could sit in on the meetings and keep an eye on your ex-wife and son, she suggested. Minato nodded. He could just use Kage Bunshin after all. Suddenly Yami stood up because Destiny had run out of breath. You know. It's not fair, every girl except that snake user has something special for Naruto-kun. She went into thinking mode before smirking and snapping her fingers, disappearing in a black flash. Kami groaned. Why do I get the feeling this is going to bite us in the ass? She asked. The other gods just chuckled. Same time, Namikaze Estates. Yami appeared in Anko's room, half scaring her to death when she yelled, "Boo," to the snake wielder. Anko jumped and turned around holding a kunao in each hand, only to relax when she saw Yami. "Ah, Yami-chan, what are you doing here?" she asked. Yami smiled and snapped her fingers, causing a scroll with black outlines and the picture of a hydra adorning the paper appeared in front of the purple-haired woman. I am here to offer you the use of the hydra summoning contract, seeing as they would be far better comrades than those traitorous snakes, she said, smiling. Anko's jaw dropped. Really? She asked. Yami nodded, still smiling. Yep. You just have to do one little thing for me, she said. Anko eyed her warily. Yeah, what's that? She asked. Yami's smile seemed to grow. Simple. I want your permission to give you a bloodline, she said. Anko was once again stunned. You wanna offer me not only a contract that Oro team searched for, but also a bloodline? She asked incredulously. Yami just nodded. Fucking right. Anko said while pumping her fist into the air. Yami chuckled. Good to hear. Now hold still while I give you this bloodline and then I will leave the scroll here for you, she said happily as she touched Anko's head and Anko was enveloped in a black light. When it died down, nothing had changed about Anko, but you could feel something was more predatory about her. Now, this bloodline gives you the scales of a hydra for defense and you can inject different enzymes into your torture victims, she said, before smirking lecherously, or you could create an aphrodisiac and go to town with Naruto-kun, she said, causing Anko to blush. Well, that concludes our business, Jane, she said, disappeared just as Anko launched several hydra heads after her. After all, her snake jutsu were now hydra jutsu. Anko blinked at the hydra heads as they all turned around and looked at her curiously. Slowly, a grin made its way onto Anko's face. This will be interesting, she said, smirking with her new elongated canines.